Tihei mori ora. No mai hare mai, ki te riri ngā mihi nui. I te konihira tau ki Waitaha, tēnā koutou. Tēnā koe kai whakahare Stephen, ki te mihi i kai mahi, tēnā koutou. Kia Māori kia tū, kia Māori kia ora, whanau, hare mai te tauki. Helmi e, hui e, tai.
Karakia.
Ka haia tiata, ka hapara tiata, ka kō woki te manu, ka waiori te nuku, ko te ata nui, ko horaina, ka tangi te umari o ngā tamariki, kao awatia, tihei mori ora. So thank you and welcome to the 573rd meeting of the Canterbury Regional Council. We have a quorum and the meeting may progress. It will be recorded, not live streamed yet, but recorded. So as a recorded started. So please note, should we not get to public excluded 9.2.3 and 9.2.4 by 1 p.m, we will move those items to 1 p.m. So this meeting finishes, we will move those items to 1 p.m. And the public excluded section of this meeting. And I notice Keela has just arrived, so welcome to you, Keela, from the press. And we have a number of other visitors, and welcome to the meeting. And it's good to see you, Lucy, here, over there under the panel. So welcome. We have apologies for the presence in the room today from Councillors Karakia, Paul and Cranwell, Ward and Edge, but they are online and will join us as required. It may be a bit clunky. Comms in and out here is not all that smart sometimes. One of our councillors is actually down at Whakatau, so hopefully the link lasts down that far to you, Councillor Karakia. Item 3, conflicts of interest there. Are there any conflicts of interest items on today's agenda? Then be brought to my attention. Item 4, public forum deputations. We do not have any public forums or deputations this morning. Extraordinary and urgent business. Item 5, there is none. And 6, so we move to 6, notices of motion, and we do have a notice of motion. We move to 6.1. As notice of motion has been received by Councillor Burns, and it states this: that the Canterbury Regional Council adopts the position that CRC briefings, workshops and seminars will be open to the public by default rather than closed. I'll go through this with you because Councillor Burns and I have discussed this. Notices of motion are interesting based on their own point, because once they have a mover and a seconder, they become a binary issue. So they're either accepted or rejected. Unless Councillor Burns at the start of this, when he moves his notice of motion, decides to make any adjustment to the notice of motion. So that's our standing orders. So over to you, Councillor Burns.
Kia ora, thank you, Mr. Chair. Good morning, Morena. It's great to see so many people in the public gallery. That is, in the essence, what my notice of motion is about. The notice of motion I bring today is in response to the Open for Business report by the Chief Ombudsman, published in October 2023. That report is on the investigation into workshop and meeting practices of 8 local authorities for the purposes of compliance with the principles and purposes of the Local Government Official Information and Meetings Act 1987. The Lagoima Act sets out the principles and its overall purposes, which include increasing progressively the availability to the public of official information held by local authorities, and to promote the open and public transaction of business at meetings of local authorities in order to enable more effective participation by the public in the actions and decisions of local authorities, and to promote the accountability of local authority members and officials, and thereby to enhance the respect for law and to promote good local government in New Zealand. It also recognises the purpose of local government is to enable democratic local decision making and action by and on behalf of communities, and conduct its business in an open, transparent and democratically accountable manner. It is my contention that this council is viewed with suspicion by many within our community, operating with a veil of secrecy, if you like, despite the many fine employees within the organisation. That suspicion or distrust is not helped either, because we are still to have our public meetings live streamed and exacerbated, as audio recordings are usually unavailable for about 5 days after the meeting, according to a media response to an inquiry on the 14th of February this year. The Chief Ombudsman reports that the public's perception of a council's openness is heavily influenced by how easy people find it to participate in elected members' decision making, and by how easy it is to find records of the key proceedings related to those decisions. Now, there will be some of my colleagues who will argue that adopting this position will stifle free and open debate and discussion. I would argue that if you're not confident saying things in public that you would say here, you're probably in the wrong role. I remind you too that should we adopt the proposed resolution, that does not exclude discussion away from the public where there are genuine commercial sensitivity or privacy considerations. However, these come with clear instructions and obligations. Our region's largest urban territorial authority, Christchurch City Council, has just adopted the very position in this notice of motion. And while in the early stages, the sky does not appear to have fallen in at 53 Hereford Street. In fact, from the newspaper clipping at the time of them taking this through and adopting it, Councillor Jake McClellan said it was a great day for local democracy. Councillor Victoria Henstock said that in recent years the council had been far from transparent. This is the right thing to do. Councillor Templeton wanted the briefings to continue and be made open to the public, while Councillor Sam McDonald said it was fantastic the council could be more open. The review did not include Christchurch, but Council Head of Legal and Democratic Services, Helen White, said Boshia's, that's the head Chief Ombudsman, recommendations were relevant to the entire local government sector. So to end, it is my position that transparency is the most important feature of democracy, and an informed community is an engaged community. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Burns. Before we get to the motion itself, which you will move, I put it to you that we suspend the standing orders that allow 3 speakers on each side, and then for the decision to be made. I think this is important enough that we go around the table. So that's moved by you, Councillor McKenzie. You want to move this? You want to ask a question about this standing orders? You don't? We'll get to you once we've done this, if that's okay. That's McKenzie. So move by just for the standing orders. It's just for the notice of motion, and then we'll resume normal service after the notice of motion. So you want to move that, Councillor Southworth, and second by Councillor Robinson. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
All those against? All those against?
Aye.
Carry. Councillor McKenzie.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a question for the move of the motion, for charity's sake. And he says be open to the public by default rather than closed. So the process, if the council wanted to have a closed workshop, for sake of argument, how would that process be? How do you envisage that process being enacted within the terms of your motion?
Thank you, very good question. There are some very strong pieces of legislation that provide the reasons for having things closed to the public, and I don't see any reason why that will hinder the opportunity for council to discuss things that do meet that particular criteria.
Just a question on the TUIA committee that we have. Obviously, that's not open to the public. at this stage. Have you considered that, and have you spoken to the hearing on the chairs?
It's a really interesting question, Councillor Swiggs. No, I haven't discussed it with Tuia or the chairs. That is something, I really hadn't thought about that. So, good point. But again, my intention with this is for the ones where we as councillors want to engage with our communities.
The issue that I have here, question-wise, is that we do make decisions in that committee. So I'm just wondering how you have thought about that.
Can I just reply to that, Mr. Chair? My understanding is the chair's frustration with the Tuia group is that we don't make decisions.
This down to its conclusion. I think it's a reasonable question, Councillor Burns, from Councillor Swiggs. But I think what we'll do is we'll put that notice up there, and obviously you'll be the mover of that, correct? And I'm going to do this actually. And seconded by Councillor Robinson. I see you've got your head. Well, I can't actually see you, Councillor Piper, but did you want to speak?
What I'll do is wait until we have the opportunity to give our opinion on this notice of motion, because one of the things my Te Aotearoa colleague there has actually brought up something that I wanted to bring up, but I'll do it actually when we actually have that opportunity. Kia ora.
Thank you. Look, I think we'll follow a procedure, even though we have both the standing orders. So, Greg, are you happy that you've spoken to this already and you've said what you need to say as the mover? You are. So, Councillor Robinson, do you want to speak as the seconder of this motion now? You'll reserve your opportunity to do that. All right. So now we take an opportunity for other councillors to have their say on this. And if you're online, put your hand up, please. I think we'll get rid of that notice so we can see more faces on there, because I can't see everybody. If we can do that. Yeah, thank you. So, opening gambits on this. Councillor Southwood.
Yeah, so now I speak in support. I think it is really important that councils are transparent. I don't think councillors should be able to be heard debating and making decisions, about decision making, or at least heading towards decisions, and that understanding where we're coming from. I don't think much of the briefings we have are information that isn't reasonable for the public to see for the most part, and as long as there's the right mechanisms in place to manage stuff that needs to stay with council through the public excluded process. We have that council meetings, and also a mechanism to then put information out into the public when it becomes appropriate. Then to me that is all completely within our ability to manage all of that. So I'm in support.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I find the motion, in a sense, as a libertarian, theoretically quite helpful in the open and free debate of information. But I do find that in this organisation that I have a fear, as indicated by the mover of the motion, that it will stymie and limit information flow and some of that free and frank conversation. We make no decisions in our briefings. We can have free and frank flow of information, but again, I fear that might be limited. What it will do in my mind is further reduce the knowledge of councillors, and in particular new members. And I think one of the challenges of new elected members coming into an organisation is understanding both the form and also the function and the knowledge. And the further that potentially restrict the flow of information from officers coming through nervousness or whatever means, the less opportunity for those new members coming through to fully understand what and how we operate. So again, I find it helpful in a view that we should be free and frank, but I have a real concern about what it will mean for information flow. I agree that we have legal recourse to move to public excluded for decision making when and where it is appropriate, and to have the occasional confidential briefing when required. But I'm not sure what we are achieving in this. And I know there was a significant reference made to Christchurch City Council and the view of councils across on Hereford Street. I think one of the challenges, I've probably put myself out here on a bit of a limb, is the flow of information that has been flowing between officers and councillors in this space. And I think the free and frank information potentially might come from those briefings may not actually achieve the outcomes that they are looking for. It really is beholding, in my mind, the relationship that we as governors have with the officers of the organisation and the trust that we have with the officers to get the information that we require. And if we break that trust or have a tension in that trust, information will not necessarily flow as we might want and will require. So in those brief thoughts, I speak against the motion and will vote against it at this point in time, unless others can convince me at this table, purely because I believe it will stifle flow of information, counter to what the intent of the motion does provide. So thank you.
Thank you, right. Thank you, Councillor Edge, and then who's online, and Councillor Davies.
Thanks, Chair. I want to thank Councillor Burns for bringing this motion to us. I support the motion. I have read the Ombudsman's report, and some of the questions and concerns that have just been we've heard are actually addressed in the Ombudsman's report. But the Ombudsman reiterates something to us which we, under the Local Government Act, councils are required to conduct its business in an open, transparent and democratically accountable manner. So that's the first thing. And that's pretty important. So, you know, I don't think we haven't really been doing that as well as what we could. And in terms of workshops and briefings, the page 35 of the Ombudsman's report talks about reference to a guide to LGNZ standing orders, that workshops are best described as informal briefing sessions where elected members get a chance to discuss issues outside of the formalities of kunihera meetings. It's common for councils to conduct workshops about complex and technical issues on which elected members will later be required to debate and make decisions. The purpose of the workshops should be to prepare elected members with the appropriate background and knowledge to make robust decisions for their communities, and to allow interrogation, discussion and deliberation amongst and between elected members and councils. And he goes on page 39 to say that workshops provide staff with the opportunity to spend more time with elected members to improve their understanding of a topic. And often informal meetings don't have the time to be allocated for this to occur. And obviously they're a good way to build trust and rapport between staff and councillors. So that there are times when it is of benefit not to have a fully open meeting. But on page 40, he does suggest that by default, which is what the motion is about, that we should be open, and that our council workshops could be open, as there is no decisions being made. And apparently more and more councils around the country are actually doing that. And when you go online and have a look at what people are doing, that's exactly what they're doing. And I think we need to be more open by default. And if there's circumstances where we feel that we need more technical information, then perhaps we don't open them. But I think just by being a little bit more conveying our information in the public with audio-visual presentations, and I know we've had problems with those things in the past, and we're addressing them. it will be helpful. One thing that it will mean, and he also talks about how we handle meetings, and the decision making, and the recording of decisions made at our meetings. And he suggests that he says on page 32, my view of the meeting minutes of the councils I investigated showed that some included very little detail about any discussion, debate or questioning that may have taken place. And he doesn't expect verbatim transcript is taken, but simply recording final decisions taken by elected members is plainly inadequate. So I think that the chairman, we should take more cognizance really of the ombudsman's report. And I just wondered if councils, it would have been good to actually have this as an attachment to the motion, because it would require councillors to actually read it and understand it. And I don't see anything alarming with this at all. So thanks, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Eads. So we'll go to Councillor Davies, then Councillor Karakia, and then Councillor Mackay.
Mr. Chair, regarding Councillor Swig's questions on Te Rāpū Tuia, Te Rāpū is a non-statutory partnership group, but it's not covered by the notice of motion, which is quite specific about briefings, workshops and seminars. I will support the notice of motion out of principle and due to the policy platform that I stood on in 2022 regarding digital democracy. However, while I acknowledge that Cilla Burns' intent is coming from a good place, I do feel that this notice of motion is putting the cart before the horse. I put a notice of motion regarding digital access to these meetings, which are public, and it was carried unanimously. And it seems as though we're getting closer to this policy, and that will be a great day for this council when we stream out from here, from Kurau to Mount Lyford. I believe that the question of public workshops, briefings and seminars should come further down the line once we have digital democracy and live streaming. But out of principle and due to my policy platform, I will support this today.
Thank you, Councillor Karakia.
Kia ora, kai whakahaere. So, first of all, I want to thank Councillor Burns for bringing this to the table, and also with a lot of sort of background material, quoting the Ombudsman's report, quoting responses from the Christchurch City Councillors, and also in regards to those sponsors. So many people as possible, in Councillor Burns' eyes, I would believe, have actually been engaged with. But there's a number of things that I actually struggle with. And the first one is it's actually about the availability of information. So in some ways, this notice of motion moving towards having more of a spontaneous kind of feed of information, as opposed to it being delayed, and quoting Councillor Burns, up to 5 days. So it's actually already available some way. The other part of it is that when you look at Te Rāpū Tuia, and it's just been quoted by the previous speaker, that Te Rāpū Tuia is a non-statutory committee. Now, I can't help feeling that in some ways we've just been profiled in the fact that even though that may be the case, we actually believe that when we bring our mana whenua information is needed in a number of ways to talk through an issue, to develop a strategy. There is some very, very important sort of information around wahitapu, around silent files, that actually has always protected us in some ways from ourselves. What my issue is with this one is that there has been no engagement over this notice of motion. And we all know what happens when there's no engagement, particularly with notice of motions, because it happened last week. So with this one, there has been no engagement with the Te Rōpū Tuia chairs about putting this notice of motion forward. And when we think about that, we would feel, or we believe that mana whenua, Papatupu Runanga chairs would actually feel sidelined on this, because of the fact is that they're going to enter that forum, be it non-statutory, but they're going to enter a forum that they would feel is not a safe place. And so this comes to the stifling of free and open debate, because you're not going to get that there. And that's what we actually need. Te Rōpū Tuia is a sounding board in a lot of ways. And from that particular forum, we then, as Ngāi Tahu councillors, we take notice and we actually use that to make our decisions when we vote at the Te Tepu table, council table. So I cannot support this motion. And a lot of it is based on the fact that there was a failure of engagement with mana whenua Papatupu Runanga. And there was every opportunity was had, I believe, to be able to do that. Kia ora.
Thank you. I've got the next councillor is Councillor Mackay, and then there's nobody else after that. My intention is then to go through councillors one by one. Yes, you get the opportunity to speak as the seconder right at the end. And I will not forget that. But there are other councillors that haven't spoken, and I will request, do they want to do that? So just so you're aware of that. Councillor Mackay.
Through you, Mr. Chair. I've read the said report by the Chief Ombudsman, and I'm sure that most of the councillors here have. It is notable that while the investigation was to test the concerns that councillors were using workshop and informal meetings to make decisions, he didn't actually find any evidence. The cynic in me asks, so he did actually have to do a report, so he had to find something. Our big decisions are in the annual plan and long-term plan space, and the notification of and the decision-making around policy statements and plans. Public participation opportunities abound around these transparent and consultative processes. We need to give guidance to our staff. They need to somehow reflect the wide range of views from 16 councillors that sit at this table. I am not aware of any behind the closed door decision making prior to a council meeting. I'm not sure why you don't have the confidence in the integrity of our processes. What is it that you and others don't trust here? Councillors' role at this table is largely strategic visioning for the region, unlike a TA, which generally are more focused on local community needs. I ask, what best serves the public interest? Would it be helpful to have our blue sky thinking or brainstorming take a life of its own outside this chamber, half-baked in the media, for example? I think not. We've been told in the last month by governments that live stream is progressing. Thank you, Councillor Davis, for bringing that to the table. A step up on recorded meetings, and staff are reviewing the report. Notwithstanding the standing orders, our standing orders, Local Government New Zealand's The Good Governance Guide 2022, which all councillors got, on page 63, talks to notice of motions, generally seeking a meetings agreement that the CE prepare a report on the issue of concern to the mover. This is what's happened in all the previous notice of motions of this triennium, and most have been supported by the argument that we need further information before we can make the good decision. Well, I would like a report from staff that analyses our performance against the principles outlined in the report that the Ombudsman suggests should be considered. And I think you will find that we do pretty well in this space of transparency, democracy and accountability. Thank you.
Thank you. We're going to now Councillor Pauling and then Councillor Crammell.
Oh, kia ora koutou. Yeah, thanks for the chance to speak on this. Yeah, really good debate. Great to hear from all the councillors on this, and it is something that's really important. Yeah, I agree with Councillor Davies that there's a little bit of, and to somewhat Councillor Mackay, what she has just said about needing some more work on this. I do believe, if it's to be implemented straight away, it's going to take a little bit of adjustment for all of us, both councillors and staff included. But I do support it in principle. I've read the report from the Ombudsman, and you can see that those things are important to our community. So yeah, in principle, I support it, but I do believe there's a lot of work for all of us to do to implement it seamlessly. Because as we know, there are meetings and there's meetings and there's briefings and there's briefings, and I think when there's information sharing sessions that we have, especially with external groups that come to see us, they're not about decision making. They're about sharing information between groups and the council, so that we can understand more about the issues that are out there. So I think there's a little bit of nuance in here that will need to be discovered as we move forward. But yeah, I do support the matter in principle, but I think we've got a bit of work to do. So kia ora.
Thank you, Councillor Crammell.
Kia ora koutou. Neira te mihi kia koutou I tēnei wā. So yeah, I like what Councillor Davies mentioned just before regarding that the cart before the horse. There's some good things in there in principle, but I think that there needs to be more work done, and especially as we know in council after the last notice of motion, the outcomes of that, and probably I'm directed more to the kōrero of Councillor Korako. That in a sense, yeah, some good things in there, but today I won't be supporting this notice of motion. That I believe that some work needs to be done by staff, and then hopefully in our other discussions we can talk about what this looks like, but not today, because we need to inform our treaty partners, our chairs and our runanga, and make sure they're on board with us. Kia ora koutou.
Thank you. So now I'm going to ask Councillor DJ, you need to speak to, or you want to speak to this, Councillor DJ, Councillor East.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think Councillor Sunkel clearly elucidated many of the points that I would make on this matter. I feel that there's possibly a lot of unintended consequences may come out of this, and I would certainly look to receiving a report on how we could move forward on this proposal, but at this stage I'm not of the mood to support the motion.
Thank you, Councillor McKenzie.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I've had trouble getting excited about this motion on the basis that I wasn't sure we had a problem that needed fixing, and I read the Ombudsman's report, and I wasn't convinced that anything he said in his report actually necessarily applied to the way we were conducting our business at this council. Having said all that, the speakers for the motion, I can't find myself disagreeing with any of their sentiments in terms of being open and frank and free with information for our community. So I'm still not sure which way I'm going to vote, I have to say, but I have got some concerns about the process going forward should this motion be passed. And perhaps this goes to line up with Councillors Karakia and Crammell's comments, and there's a bit of homework needs to be done before we pass this motion. And I'm still not sure, when I asked the question about the process for excluding public from any briefings or workshops, I'm still not sure I got the answer as to how that process looks. And is that going to be a councillor decision, or is it a staff decision, or is it a mixture of the two, or do we just have all our meetings open to the public? And one of the other issues that I find a little bit complicated is when we do have briefings and workshops and then council meetings and committee meetings, what can be said outside the meeting room and what can't be said outside the meeting. Now, if we have all our briefings in public, all our meetings are going to be public, then presumably there's nothing that is excluded from us commenting on in the public arena. And maybe that needs a little bit of thought as well in terms of the implications of should this motion be passed. Yeah, so I think that's all I wanted to say.
Right, we've got Councillor Ward online with his hand up, and I see you've got your hand up again, Councillor Edge. Is that for some clarity because you've already spoken on this matter?
Yeah, I thought, Chair, we were going to be able to speak openly more than once. Isn't that the case?
No, it's not. It's not the case. We're going to have the opportunity to speak once. That's outside the standing order. That was my intention. I think this is, as we go around the room, starting to resolve itself anyway. So I'm not too sure what your support of this, what more you can add to it. And anyway, we'll go to Councillor Ward.
Yeah. Good morning. I just thank Greg for bringing this motion to the table. I find it hard to actually support this. I guess I can't agree with what Councillor Saknor Mackay and the concerns that they've alluded to. I have read the Ombudsman's report, and I don't find it convincing that we are going down the right road by agreeing to this motion. And I guess as a new councillor, you know, those informal and discussions and briefings gives you confidence to build and when you're a new boy off the block. And I agree with the concerns of Council Karakia and Cranwell too. And I just feel that, you know, that we need to have free and open debate. And I'd like to ask for more information going forward before we actually adopt a motion like this. So that thank you.
Right, so we've got Councillor Southwood. You spoken? Oh, you were through. Sorry. So my apologies, Councillor Sweet.
Yeah, I just I'm not afraid of having open and frank discussion in public. I think it's what we do. And transparency and whatnot's really important. But the one thing about this that I'm really concerned about is that we talk about the partnership quite often. Sitting behind the wall there, this will have an impact on some of those things, and I can't support the notice as it is today because we haven't done that work behind to understand what the implications are for that. I understand. I've just read again the Ombudsman's words, and it's sort of around page 24. It sort of talks about standard mathematics and the impact on that. So I don't understand what that impact will be to our partner that we talk about quite often. So for this point in time, I can't support it, but I know that this will happen eventually. So I'm looking forward to when it does.
Thank you, Councillor Sweet. So I think we've just gone around the room. I'm not going to speak on this. And so we'll go back to you, Genevieve, that's the seconder, and then Greg, your final say.
First of all, I strongly support his notice of motion because what he's not seeking is a complete change. He's seeking it as a default. So we should have things open to the public in preference to public excluded. And it's not saying that we can't go ahead and do some things out of the public eye, and that's understandable. But there's a whole purpose to what we do here, and that's for engaging the community. And some of you are talking about the cart before the horse. Well, I consider it as words on paper before a book is published. That's how important what we say is. I mean, by default, it's just a word by default. I totally agree with it. The Local Government and Official Informations and Meetings Act of 1987 is really clear, actually. Everything should be discoverable. And coming from a journalist background, all due credit, You need information to write adequate stories. You need information to get the facts right. And if you don't have the facts, you ask the wrong people and you don't get the information. You need to have the information readily available. And if you go through the whole Lagoima Act and you seek to get information with urgency and have to wait 20 days for it and get extension after extension, that makes life very difficult for the community. And that's why we're here. Under section 48 of the Lagoima Act, the right of local authorities to exclude the public, but they must be subject to strict guidelines. What we're saying here is just by default that we should be engaging with the public. And yes, live streaming is part of this, but the meetings and briefings won't be part of that, will it? Or will it? That's what we need to determine. As I say, briefings are discoverable, as are workshops. But don't forget that the Christchurch City Council just maybe 5 years ago, was heavily questioned about their meetings that were publicly excluded. The ratio was very high. We don't want to go down that track. Anyway, I just go back to Councillor Burns. I think it's a very brave outlook here, and I think good on him for bringing it forward, because as it stands, I don't think information is publicly available readily enough, and it should be as a default. Thank you.
Thank you. So, final word, Councillor Burns.
Kia ora, thank you, and thanks for everyone putting their 2 bobs with it. I think at the end of the day, that's what we want. I will just read a very short passage from the report and make a comment. The Chief Ombudsman said that he was pleased the majority of councils opened workshops and had begun to open them at the start of the 2022 electoral term. My view is that the principle of open by default should be followed for all meetings and workshops. I understand there may be occasion to close either partially or fully a particular workshop. However, council should start from a position of openness and then consider specific reasons why any proceedings may need to be closed and whether those reasons are compelling. The principle of open by default is also supported by the Guide to LGNZ Standing Orders. I will make the comment too. It's scary. It's scary to have an opinion. It's scary to be held to the words that you say. But if, as your elected officials, can't have the courage to say in front of our constituents what we believe and what we think, then it's a pretty sad state of affairs, I would think. Interestingly, the Oxford Dictionary says courage, the ability to do something that frightens one. Bravery, strength in the face of pain or grief. The sky's not going to fall if we take the position that we default to open. There is plenty of criteria in place to close if the need is there. So I will just finish on that. And can I call for division 2, please?
Yeah, thank you, Councillor. Thank you, Councillor Burns. I think it's been a reasonable debate on this, and I think it's opened up some opportunity. But this is, as I said, binary. So the division will be run by government staff. Right.
Councillor Southwood. 4. Councillor Ward.
Against.
Councillor Sunkel. Councillor Swiggs. Councillor Robinson. 4. Councillor Edge.
4.
Councillor Pauling.
4, thank you.
Councillor Cranwell.
Against.
Councillor McKenzie.
Against.
Councillor DJ.
4.
Chair Scott.
Councillor East,
Against.
Councillor Davies,
For.
Councillor Burns,
For.
Councillor Karakia,
So,
sorry, what was that?
no.
Thank you. Councillor McKay.
Right, so there were 7 for and 9 against, so the motion has been lost. However, can I make my comment now is that I think that you've heard enough in this conversation that there is not wild support for what you're trying to do here, Greg, but there is some support for what you're trying to do here. And I don't want you to keep shaking your head on this because I think you have the opportunity now to actually to craft this into something that's going to work for everybody. And we never had that opportunity. There was no staff advisory in it. So thank you for doing this and thank you for the debate. And don't be downhearted on it. Yeah, that's good. All right. Moving on with the next piece of information. If we move to 7, it's on 7.1. So we're now dealing with the minutes from the 14th and the 28th of February on page 6. Has anybody got any issues with clarity or no? Could I have someone that moves that, please? Thank you, Councillor East, and seconded by Councillor Southwood. Any discussion? Any no discussion? All those in favour, please say aye. All those against? And that's carried. Thank you. So move to 8, which are report items. And 8.1 is the Council Resolution Status Report. And we have Lisa here if we need Lisa. Lisa, you're down the back here somewhere. I can see you, yes. Again, are there any questions of clarification that we need to ask of Lisa? Joe's shaking his head, so we'll take it to your own. We'll put that motion up. Notes the status of previous resolution, the Council Resolution Status Report, March 2024, and move for that, please. Thank you, Genevieve, and seconded by Councillor Southworth. All those in favour? Sorry, any discussion on that?
Aye.
Doesn't have to say all that's against. And that's also carried. So now moving to 8.2, previous committee activities and minutes. And this is, we're going to go to the chairs of the committees to speak to these items. So Audit, Finance and Risk Committee, Councillor Edge, if you wouldn't mind.
Thanks, Chair. I'm just going to run through a few of the items that we discussed as part of these minutes. The meeting had a really busy agenda, and there were lots of questioning from members about all these issues. 8.2, the Bancorp Treasury Report. The new government's financial policy agenda wasn't available at the time. However, its proposed tax cuts could provide support to the economy, which may see inflation remain higher for longer. That was the feeling from the Bancorp. Council is compliant with its covenants and policies, and there was also some discussion about Standard & Poor's financial rating for territorial authorities, which will have to largely fund the Three Waters programs through CCOs. That remains still to be seen, of course. But ECAN is with Fitch, and we have currently have an AA plus rating, so that's pretty good. 8.3 financial reserves, and we do have a paper on that coming back to us again later, but we had a good discussion about the health of our reserves and considered further work to assess and refine, and we may consider in the long-term plan and subsequent annual plans. The flood protection reserves is below target, page 115 of the LTP. mentions reserves at 70%, or should be 70% of the money that's spent annually on maintenance expenditure. But it's basically a self-insurance fund, and we're a bit low on that at the moment. Instead of 70%, we've got 7.1, and it's about 55%. And currently there's planning to replenish our general reserves by 2.4 million per year for 5 years. Whether or not more debt funding might be required at some other date, not sure. 8.5 quarterly report, October-December. All operating surplus, or an operating surplus of about 6.24 million, with a cash in the bank at December about 20 million. And 29 of the 34 key initiatives were on track. And the paper provides information about levels of service targets for the various portfolios, and the just noting the air quality, transport and urban development portfolio has since been released and will impact. Will impact. Obviously, the GPS will impact on LTP and public transport going forward. In October, Council approved additional funding of 3.5 million from general rates reserves to help implement the Sustainable Consents Delivery Plan, and by all accounts, that's apparently working really, really well. 8.6, the annual report for 22/3 provided by Audit New Zealand, unmodified report to the end of June 2023. And there were some outstanding items that management will address as part of that process. In terms of the long-term plan, consultation document 8.7, again an unmodified report, and emphasis matters were recorded for the Public Transport Futures program due to the uncertainty at the time of the GPS, and that impact will flow through. In terms of 8.9, protective security update, well, work's underway to improve our maturity against the protective security requirements framework, physical information and personal issues. And in terms of 8.10, the committee's annual work plan was also described in the report. So that's me. Thanks, Chair.
Yeah, thank you. Look, we'll move all these at the end. Go to the Regional Transport Committee, which I chair. So the highlight really was the presentations or the deputations that were made to us on behalf of Emily Jones, who's from Central Otago, about the speed of buses, traffic passing buses, and the concerns that people have that the speed's 20k. And the average speed that's been clocked is about 65k. We have lost a number of children to these accidents, and particularly in rural areas, so it is a concern. And then the second one was from Philip Cameron from Waitamatata, which was regarding the requirement for children not to have seatbelts. There's no requirement for them to have seatbelts on buses, and some of these children in rural areas travelling sort of 40, 50 k's a day on a bus, and some of them on shingle roads. And there's a concern that some of the damage that can be done to these little ones when a bus has to stop suddenly or do whatever. So they've brought those issues to us. We hopefully be able to put those in front of the Minister of Education for the issue about school buses, but the Minister of Transport also for the restrictions of speeds. I'm not too sure if people are aware, and I've got a bus stop that picks up young ones outside my place, and I don't think anyone's aware that you can only do 20k, and that's either way. When people have slowed down in the past to 20k, they've been abused by others who don't understand the rules. So we probably need to do better than that somewhere online. So we're going to take that opportunity, and that's probably going to be taken by the Central Otago, by the Otago Regional Transport Committee to arrange those meetings with the Minister. that's about all there was, unless there's an inquiry from another councillor. I don't want to go on too much about that. Okay, so let's move to civil defence, John.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think that meeting, Civil Defence Group meeting, was 22nd of February, which was immediately post the Port Hills fire. And on that day, we had a visit from the Prime Minister and Minister's responsible, Minister Mitchell, thanking staff up in the Justice Precinct across all the agencies involved. And then we had the opportunity to talk with Minister Mitchell. He attended the meeting briefly following those other conversations. One of the things that came out of the fire conversation was a piece of work that Selwyn District are doing around fire risk and the national environmental standard around forestry, and the inability of our planning instruments, whether regionally or through territorial authorities, to take account of those issues of fire and the possibility. So Selwyn District, Christchurch City are most interested in those, and the subsequent to that conversation we had moved a motion within council to investigate a joint submission on those matters to the relevant ministers to maybe get some changes to allow for some work and planning to provide some protection around plantation forestry, particularly in the peri-urban environment. Other conversations that we had around the further consolidation of our views around the CPM review. You'll be aware that we have done a review of civil defence, came up with some options, bit contentious, but we are starting to refine that greater understanding with our mayors and chief executives of what it is we're trying to achieve in the uplift and resourcing. So we're slowly making progress on that. This was again borne out a little in the piece of work on catastrophic planning at a national level, how we work in the catastrophes, the big four. We talk about the subluxes and AF8s and a bunch of things. So where are the holes in our planning processes? And part of the uplift in our long-term plan is to provide a little more resourcing into our regional offices to get some of those planning processes in play. And there was also a conversation around recovery planning and an idea of setting up, I guess, a panel of experts in a sense, maybe out of the MSD and some of those government departments and others that may advise territorial authorities and others as a conduit to providing information. A wee bit lukewarm from some of our colleagues in the territorial authorities who do take a bit of a view that it's their kingdom and they can run things. But again, it's a conversation about how we uplift and work on recovery. We're very good at thinking about how we respond to major incidents, but as we increasingly get these significant events happening, whether they fire, flood, earthquake, or the like, recovery will become increasingly difficult and the cost associated. So it's just a summary of some of the conversations we had in that space. Thank you.
Nothing for clarity around that. I'll put that notice, that recommendation to you. I suggest that you will move that. Grant, are you happy to move that?
Yes, I'll move that, thanks.
And seconded by Councillor Sunkel. Any discussion on this at all from anyone? If there's no discussion, I'll put that to you. All those in favour, please say aye. All those against, carried. So we'll move now to 8.3 and ask Jess Burgess to come to the table, but also we'll ask Lucy. You can come to the table now too, Lucy, because the second bit about the housing plan is Lucy's piece of work. Lucy Barguana has done that piece of work and has been heavily involved. This is a big piece of work on behalf of Waimakariri, Christchurch City, Selwyn and ourselves. I'm understanding, Jess, I think that everyone had signed off on it but us today, but Selwyn are still, they're going to do it this afternoon. But over to you. Oh, the housing. Okay.
Okay, through you, Mr. Chair. Thank you for that. Yeah, so we've got two papers here, so 8.3 and 8.4. Firstly, the Greater Christchurch Spatial Plan. So I'm very pleased to introduce this report, which seeks Council's adoption of the Greater Christchurch Spatial Plan. It's both the Spatial Plan for Greater Christchurch and the Joint Future Development Strategy required under the National Policy Statement on Development, commonly referred to as the SUD. By the way of background, in February, the Greater Christchurch Partnership Committee endorsed the recommendations of the Spatial Plan Hearings Panel. Selwyn, Waitakere, and Christchurch City Council have all now adopted the plan. Since 2007, the Greater Christchurch Partnership has taken a collaborative approach to tackling important issues that we face collectively. The Spatial Plan builds on and replaces the previous plans and strategies developed for Greater Christchurch. Hugely important to this is aligning land use and transport planning. It provides a blueprint for how population and business growth will be accommodated into the future through targeted intensification in and around centres and along public transport corridors. The plan sets a desired urban form for a projected population of 700,000 and beyond that up to 1 million people to ensure Greater Christchurch is future-proofed in the context of population growth and climate change. Delivers a plan that coordinates and aligns the aspirations of central government, local government and mana whenua, and satisfies the requirements, as I said, of the MPSUD for Greater Christchurch councils to prepare that future development strategy. Collective effort and coordinated action is required to ensure that ongoing population growth is matched by increased resilience to natural hazards and climate change, improved equitable access to employment, education and housing, and reduce carbon emissions to create a sustainable and prosperous future for Greater Christchurch. That's why we have come together again to collectively produce a spatial plan for our common future. We all have committed huge effort and resource towards creating a plan that will achieve the aspirations of our community. So a huge thank you to all involved in that regard, from both the governance and staff perspective. The spatial plan was developed with significant community input, including effective youth engagement and participation to ensure it reflects and will deliver on the aspirations of our community. Consistent with the settlement pattern identified in earlier strategies, the draft plan focuses on targeted intensification along our public transport corridors and the prosperous development of Kāinga and Nahonga. In terms of engagement on the draft spatial plan, we had over 7,000 responses to the online survey, which was quite incredible. Of note was the high level of youth engagement. We had 1,300 youth under 25 take part in the survey, and 386 rangatahi from schools, tertiary institutions, youth rotary and the participation groups in tailored workshops. In terms of the formal consultation process, we had 358 submissions, of which 86 chose to present to the hearings panel. The diverse hearings panel representing the partners listened to the feedback and drew conclusions about how the draft spatial plan might be augmented to reflect the expert evidence presented across the 6 days of the hearings in October, November last year. The panel was led by Stephen Dace from Mitchell Dace Resource Management Practitioners. Councillor Edge Online was part of that hearings panel. On the basis of submissions, the panel heard they came up with a list of recommended changes and additions to the draft plan. Those are reflected in what you see today. On the whole, the panel supported the overall direction of the draft spatial plan, and they were particularly impressed by the highly engaged youth participation. In the panel's experience, this successful youth engagement and participation model is an outstanding and leading example of youth engagement in a critical future-focused strategic planning process in New Zealand. The voice of youth reinforced the need for better, more affordable public transport, and particularly enhancing the environment. And in the papers, you'll see the engagement and the feedback that is drawn out of that process. So again, thank you to all councillors, all partners, governance, staff, external and internal, who are involved in developing the spatial plan. And all, happy to take the rest of the paper as read and draw your attention to the recommendations on page 89. I just noted Councillor Ridge had made a comment earlier that the attachments A, B and C referenced in the recommendations are directly related to 8.3, 8.3.1, 0.2 and 0.3 of the attachments. So that if the council's happy, we can substitute that reference in the recommendations. So I'm happy to take any questions and then we'll get on to this.
Yeah, good idea. Let's do this first. And just noting for people in the room that Councillor Edge was part of the submission hearing panel, and we thank him for doing that. Any questions or just regarding this? It's quite a rather big document, but it has been. When did we start this piece of work, Jess?
That's fair. It's a long-standing process of a lot of planning work that has happened over many years. But this process in particular started in
22, I think, or 21. So it's been a number of years. We did the 2018 Our Space Future Development Strategy, and this has continued to build on that. But it is 15 or so years of probably more than that now, 17 years worth of planning and transport planning, urban planning since the urban development strategy in 2007. So.
Questions, comment? Sorry, Genevieve.
I just want to say, amazing hard work you guys have done, and fantastic document. Yeah, really good. Thank you.
I'm going to dismiss you, Jess, but we don't need to say any more on this until we get to the other end of this. So that's the motion there, Councillor Edge. You want to move?
Yes, I'll move.
Councillor Southwood.
Yep, happy to second.
We have a mover and a second, being Councillor Edge and Councillor Southwood. Any further discussion on that? I see Councillor Davies and then.
Mr. Chair, I stand and speak in support of the spatial plan, the intent behind it, the foresight to plan for our shining city by the peninsula and her growth into the future. Because there is something special happening down here. You can feel it, and good planning is key to ensuring that we develop into a place of harmony and not one of sprawl and poor urban form. I thank officers for their hours of work on this Greater Christchurch partnership, for their oversight, and the public for their input. I draw attention particularly to the additional paragraph at the bottom of 6.5 on page 77 of the plan, which states, A, in the longer term, the heavy rail corridor may provide some additional passenger service opportunities to complement and integrate with the MRT network proposed in this plan. This may seem like a small paragraph in the context of the plan, but it is the result of work done by many people like Brendan Hurrey, former councillor Tane Apanui and others who have advocated for passenger rail on our heavy rail infrastructure lines. And it is a foot in the door for future development. I asked Jesse, when was the mass rapid transit corridor in the plan first mooted from Belfast to Hornby? And he said around 2007 again, with the development of the urban strategy. And so it's taken 17 years to this point. And where are we going to be in 17 years from now? Mr. Chair, I appeal directly to the top of the government in this regard, and particularly to the Prime Minister, Mr. Luxon, because Mr. Luxon knows Christchurch. He calls himself a Cantabrian. He supports the Crusaders. He grew up on Condell Avenue, which is in northeast Christchurch. And yesterday morning on Hoskins' show, he spoke of how his grandmother lived in a state house here, and he mowed her lawns every week. And so, yes, cut the orphan fuel tax. This is what the National Party campaigned on. It is their mandate. But if we're going to socialise that cut through the increase in vehicle registration fees, then we need a slice of that pie. And we need to keep the MRT vision on the boil. We have to protect the route. It doesn't need to be a gold-plated process. And we as a council have to do everything that we can to ensure that the detailed business case is positively recognised in the National Land Transport Plan later this year. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Davies. Councillor Sunkel.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll give a non-political broadcast on this matter. I really appreciate the work, and as others have stated, it's had 15 years in its, I guess, gestation to get to the point where it is today. And it is not my roadie in a sense of the work that's being done, but I genuinely appreciate how we have reached a point where we, in a sense, ring-fence Greater Christchurch through Lincoln, Wollaston, and through Rangiora, and then filling and working our MRT, our transport processes, and that blueprint for the future. If it really resonates, there'll be stuff in there I won't like, and there'll be questions to me that I won't be able to answer. But in the concept, what has been achieved, I think is magnificent. And I thank you all for your work and appreciate what this will mean for the future of Greater Christchurch and in the service county along the way.
Councillor McKenzie.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. As an avid fan of Yes Minister, I was extremely impressed by the 450 pages I was meant to be reading through, and I looked very hard to the executive summary, Jesse, struggled to find it. And so I found some stuff in the detail, one of which I think is really exciting, and that we are providing space for business and the economy to prosper. I think this is extremely good aim for this plan. And as a country person, I'm always amused when urban development is based around restoring and enhancing the natural environment. I look forward to seeing a paddock of wheat growing around this road out here. But look, I think that this is a stunning document, and we really do that with it seriously. So I think we deserve a huge amount of congratulations for that.
Before we go to the movement season, I'd just like to say what a great piece of work this is. I came in here in 2016, and this was a bit fraught. Relationships were a bit fraught, but people have picked themselves up, and as say, it's really grown some momentum since 2021, and it's got to where it is today. And it's got a whole lot of council, but it's got to where it's got to today. It has been lauded by others about it. It's such a good plan. This is something that Christchurch and Greater Christchurch deserves. The piece in it that I think Joe's alluding to we need to keep pushing on with it. The urban development stuff is really, really good, but the public transport system that we need to provide for Christchurch that comes out of this plan is something that we need to keep pushing on. It's tough times at the moment, but we need to actually keep pushing the central government on this, and that's as long as I'm here, I'll be doing that. Right, I don't want to go on too much, but Vicky, you seconded this, so you have an opportunity to speak to it now, and then we'll go to you, Grant, I think.
Okay.
So it's really exciting to see it come to the table, and we're the last, I understand, to be passing this today. So good to know that other 3 councils have already passed it. Really just to flag, it's an integrated plan. All the pieces we've worked together. We've got a blue-green network, which has been particularly noted as something that's quite specific for the Greater Christchurch area. That's something we picked up. Let's hope other cities also go down that line as they develop their next urban plans. It is developing on what's gone before, so there's nothing that's really like out left field. And so let's hope that we can, really build momentum on that basis. We've got intensification where it makes sense, so enabling population to grow potentially to 1 million whilst enhancing our natural environment, the quality of our rivers, enabling that public transport and decarbonisation. So the things that we know we need to achieve, and the things that we know we've heard from a really high proportion of the people that submitted on these plans through the Hui My process, and then subsequently, it's taken all of that on board, and I think it's a really good, well-balanced, integrated plan that will see us turn into an even better city than we already are.
Thank you, Vicky. Grant.
Thanks, Chair. I just want to thank Jesse for his comments as well. This has been a project long in the making. I was thinking, obviously the 2007 Greater Christchurch Urban Development Strategy, and then of course we then had some earthquakes. There was a resilient Greater Christchurch plan that came out to sort of get us through that period of disruption. Then our space document. In 2020, I began this process with Environment Canterbury on the GC 2050 engagement program, and that basically reinforced a lot of the things that have been said in the previous years before that in various forums, and that those comments taken forward as part of this spatial plan. And I just want to say that the consultation process through the Hui Mai, with over 7,000 people submitting, was pretty outstanding, really, and got some great comments. And over the last few years, the committee itself, we've had many workshops and listened to our communities so that we could come up with a plan that is, received really well by the community. The hearings panel received volumes of submitter information and conducted hearings over 6 days. for those who wish to be heard. And we received excellent staff advice along the way, responded really well. And I want to again thank the staff for all their input into this and their cooperation to make it life easy for the panel members. Questions being answered really efficiently. We held a special youth session at Canterbury University, and the presentations there were of an extremely high caliber, and we really enjoyed the presentations from youth throughout Canterbury. The existing GCP urban area has good capacity to accommodate residential and business growth within the context of the current urban areas. The mass rapid transit proposal has a positive cost benefit and would help provide the catalyst for development along the corridor. And we keep getting reminded by our Whakakapi members who present to us that this is a city shaping project, and it will be. It's quite exciting if we can keep the momentum of that going. The indicative business case for the MRT project was approved by the last government, so we're waiting for decisions on this current government, and hopefully they will be positive. On page 92 of our report, item 14, that identifies some of the background reports that we used to shape the final plan. So there's lots of work behind the scenes. And then following deliberations, the panel suggested some amendments to the draft. And they're really, if staff, councillors want to look at it a bit more, it's the markup version on page 195, and that indicates the changes to the original draft that went out for consultation. And some of the maps have been updated as well. And then page 355 contains the final plan. And on page 374, there's a map showing the sort of key structural and long-term vision for the city. That's just on a one page. You can see the vision there. But the key elements do include provision for future urban growth with an aligned transport system that builds on the PT Futures work, which seeks to improve the network across the city. And urban growth would take place along the core transport routes and around business hubs. And importantly, there are 6 opportunities identified in more detail, and you can refer to those on page 356. The diagram on page 368 also shows where the spatial plan sits in terms of informing other plans. So that's an important part of this whole process, is that it will go on to inform other planning processes by district councils and others. And the key changes, or a couple of the key changes that I noted, really to do with the opportunities. Opportunity 2, page 243, ensuring urban development is carefully managed, and growth is going to take place in appropriate places. They just they look like minor changes, but they mean a lot. Opportunity 3, page 247, additional comments regarding health and well-being of our water bodies, and that was an important part of the submission process. Opportunity 4, page 251, we inserted the word quality for affordable housing and elaborated a bit more on that in page 259. And 254, just for noting, there's inserted a commentary about broad locations for residential development, which is really important too, for people to understand that there's still work to go on in terms of detail later on. And then on opportunity 5, page 60, there's a couple of new clauses concerning primary production and tertiary institutes and how the urban growth may affect those things. But I think going forward, continual collaboration and quality urban design across all of the 6 opportunities should ensure that growth towards a population of 1 million in Greater Christchurch will deliver better outcomes for the lives of people and the environment. So a really great piece of work for future investment in the city.
Thanks, Grant.
Thanks, Chair.
That's a very detailed thing. But I know this is your passion, so we allow that to happen. If you want.
Thanks, Chair.
Councillor Praku has got his hand up, but we're going to deal with this first, and then we'll go to you, Councillor Praku. So that's the motion here. It's in front of us. It's been up for a while. I'll ask for all those in favour of that, please say aye.
Aye.
All those against, please say no. That's passed through. Well done, Jess. That's good. That's a good effort. Now, Councillor Praku, before we get to the housing bit, you want to say something?
Oh, kia ora, Chair. What I was wanting to do is just to tautoko the original speakers for speaking to this, but also Jesse. One thing that's really important here, they talk about kāinga nohanga, and I think it still needs some real profiling, and particularly when we're talking around papa kāinga. And also when you look at the spatial plan and relating it to Papatupu Runanga and Māori whenua, you might talk about mana whenua. They are the true mana whenua, because without any whenua, you got no mana. And so I think that we need to be quite clear moving forward on this sort of whole spatial plan and around housing. And one thing that Councillor Edge brought up was actually more innovative design. Well, then the other part of it is actually more innovative ways of actually living, and that's where papa kāinga comes in. And particularly, it became a very, very important change in the way people wanted to live, particularly after COVID, after the COVID lockdowns, because they saw the beauty of how it's important for whānau, to actually live in collective clusters. And that's what papa kāinga is about. But if we're going to be able to build papa kāinga, well, then there's a whole lot of work actually with Māori tenure, Māori design, and even looking at kāinga order and all their involvement in this. I mean, we're still told as Māori actually how they're going to design our house. Yep. Mixing waters and all this sort of thing. So I just wanted to highlight those points of view, particularly from a Māori councillor's perspective. Kia ora.
Just about to get on to housing, so you might want to have another crack at that once we get on to that now. Thank you. Look, so the housing action plan, which is 8.4 on page 43 of the agenda, really ably represented by you, Lucy. I'm really proud of this piece of work that you've done. I particularly like the housing challenges diagram that you've come up with, and also the snakes and ladders of housing, which is snakes and ladders of housing is about the sections of housing from rough sleepers right through the sale process, which makes it then easy. So, well, not easy. Housing's not easy. That's a bit silly to say that, but it makes it more understandable to look at where you can have an effect. And I think that's one of the things, Lucy, that's really struck home to me, that piece of work that you've done. And it's something that I'll speak to and speak in your mind. But anyway, if you want to speak to this, yes, and then Lucy, or which way are you going to do it?
Yes, through you, Mr. Chair. Just thank Lucy for all of her hard work on this and wrangling the partnership to actually get this housing action plan completed in front of you today. It was action out of the 2018 Our Space Future Development Strategy, which is when that work started. So I'll just quickly run through a couple of things, but this joint housing action plan has been developed collaboratively among the GCP partners with engagement with other critical stakeholders, including private sector developers and community housing providers. In December last year, it was endorsed by the Partnership Committee and recommended for adoption by the Council partners, as you noted earlier, Chair. So when considering it today, Waitaki and Christchurch City Council have already adopted the housing action plan. Housing is a fundamental determinant of social and economic well-being, and housing affordability is recognised as a critical issue for the partnership to address. While historically housing in Greater Christchurch was more affordable than other centres, in the past year rents have risen faster and unaffordability has increased more than anywhere else in New Zealand. The implementation actions within the Housing Action Plan look to identify and investigate collaborative opportunities and solutions to the current housing challenges and ultimately improve housing choice and affordability. The plan seeks to create outcomes beyond what each partner can achieve independently. I also note that there's some work happening through the Mayoral Forum as well around a regional housing strategy. So there's a lot of synergies between what's happening in Greater Christchurch and also across the region. So there's some further work that we'll bring back through this council at some point. Again, just note the recommendations, the references to the attachments A and B. Again, they reflect the attachments 8.4.1 and 4.2 respectively. So I think government's teams make those changes. So yeah, Lucy's, I don't know if you want to say something, Lucy, as well, and happy to answer any questions. So.
Thanks, Jesse, and thank you, Peter. It's a real thrill to be here today. I feel really excited about this. Selwyn is hopefully going to be adopting it after 1 o'clock this afternoon. So between you guys, that means we've got a royal flush, and so hopefully this can proceed. So I love this piece of work. We've got the spatial plan now with its long-term, big strategic view of where the sub-region wants to go, and a clear theme through all the engagement that happened all the way through has been housing as a really critical concern for people in Greater Christchurch. So I feel like this is a good kind of crack at making this happen. I'm very pleased that we've got such support to get cracking on phase 1, and a whole lot of stuff is underway already within the councils as they stand, but by doing it together we can jump that much further and faster. So I'm very grateful for the chance to be here today, and I want to particularly thank Chair Scott for his championship of this, because without that it would have been much more difficult, but it's been just fantastic. And likewise, working with Mana Whenua, having Jane Hurdia and others working closely, and that this will complement the kind of Nukuanga strategy that Mana Whenua are preparing, as well as the Canterbury Mayoral Forum work. So I'm feeling that this is a nice collaborative thing that will make a difference. So thank you very much.
I think it's a compelling piece of work for anyone that wants to get involved with this. I mean, housing is one of those things that we really need to get a better understanding of, and actually how we move people between those segments. You know, we've got people hanging around in 4-bedroom houses, the top end 2 people, and then there's some people that can't get into them, and how do we move the middle, but you know, the young working people into housing. And I just think there's a big hunk missing in the middle that would fix the bottom end. Actually, and I think that this sits nicely actually along with conversations that we can have with Minister Bishop about this. Anybody else got a question or clarification of Lucy?
Hey, thanks, Lucy. This is really cool his work, and as Chair Scott said, it's, housing is really, really important, especially in affordability, which is just unbelievably bad right now. But one thing in this report that really bugs me is the mention of housing affordability, household affordability. And I just wanted to understand when household affordability became the benchmark for housing affordability. Because, you know, used to be just income as a single person. Now it's household income has become the benchmark for what housing affordability is. So when did that happen, and is that a continuing pattern, I suppose, is going to keep going? Because that's just, in my opinion, that's just accelerating the unaffordability of housing.
Sorry, hopefully I've understood what you're saying. I think it's trying to come up with something that sort of makes broad sense. So the household being that we're measuring, there's no point measuring the houses, we have to measure the relation to the people within them and what this actually looks like. So I don't quite see the distinction, because it is based on household income versus, so I suppose, do you mean in terms of the measure that we're using, like the 30%? So,
sorry, I'll just clarify, sorry, Chair, I'll just clarify that it is, in this paper, it's all talking about household income, whereas go back a wee while, and so I've looked back at some of the metrics that they've used to be the housing affordability was based on individual incomes, not household incomes.
And so when did we start talking about household income? Because that's now sort of skewing what household affordability looks like. Yeah, it's because it's just something that really bugs me about how we're starting to, as a society, sort of talk about affordability. Now, affordability is like, it might be 5 times your house, you know, as a household, you might be buying 5 times your affordability of a household, but that's actually 10 times the affordability of an individual, which is the old metric.
Yeah, I think I understand what you mean. So, because there isn't there's not an overall single accepted measure of what we're talking about here, I've had a run at it from a few different directions and trying to really come. So this was a really good question that came up from Christchurch City when the councillors debated that too. Like, it's like, well, where are the numbers? How many in each of those categories of what we're talking about? And that's something we're still refining as part of it. So the thing for me, what we know is it's not affordable for so many people and increasingly unaffordable for just about everybody. So I mean, I take the point, and that's something to refine as we go on through. So that first tranche of 8 actions, they're simultaneous and they it's kind of defining in relation to each other, but the monitoring of change requires us to come up with some working definition. So yeah.
Hey, thank you for that. I'm filling up my phone because the council are trying to get online and I'm trying to fix it. I'm not ignoring what's going on at the moment. So, excuse me. Anybody else?
Just to comment, it's such an important piece of work. Like fundamentally being able to be in a warm, dry home, it's life changing, and it enables people to be actually reproductive and connected to communities. To be, you know, it's so fundamental. When I look at that in paragraph 15 and the proportion of households that are in stress circumstances in a variety of housing types, and also the commentary of 40% of retirees being in renting, and you know that ability to be connected to your community. The big problem with renting is that you don't have any stability. And when you look at how vulnerable, well, many people really vulnerable and really grow connected to their local people and that gain support and well-being and just, you know, helping out with an elderly neighbour, taking them to get something, a bit of shopping or whatever it is, and all of that can be broken by somebody selling a rental and you have to move. Like, it's actually really terrifying. So it's great to see this report here starting to really get to the grips with this. And for me as well, tying in with the spatial plan, the significant importance of having mixed housing sizes in communities broadly. We have far too many areas where you have 3-4 bedroom homes. People age, they're still in the 3-4 bedroom homes, they're so connected to their community, and then it all sort of locks up. There's no movement. You can't move within your own community to a size of house that suits you. And so yeah, just it's a really sort of wicked problem, and we're trying to move from. I mean, fundamentally, this is a housing issue that's largely also caused by the economic model that we live in. So there is a greater issue that needs addressing, but I appreciate at this point we can't solve that one, but this is moving in a good direction within the framework paradigm that we're currently in. So thank you for all the work and the message. Yeah, let's keep on going.
All right, I think there's a consensus here that this is a really good piece of work, and we're very lucky to have your energy down from Auckland to do this piece of work. And hopefully you won't go back to Auckland anytime soon. So you guys can step back, and we'll put the motion, and I'd like to move that actually, that we do this, and seconded by Councillor Sweeps, seconding. Okay. So any further comment on this from anybody?
Just a quick comment from me, Chair.
We'll get to you, Grant.
Is this work? Yeah, this working now. The comment that I made around the housing affordability, that is the critical issue that we're facing in our society right now. And I do get concerned when metrics change from individual to household income measuring the affordability of housing, because it's just skewing the relationship between what's affordable. Can I have another one? Oh no, this is working again. So I just want to make sure that, and it's heartening to hear that that is going to get looked at, because that work needs to take place, because if we just keep pushing it outwards, we're just leaving everybody behind, and we'll just continue pulling up the ladder and leaving everybody else behind. Thanks.
Grant.
Just quickly, the spatial plan basically provides a really good background information or for the planning of these housing initiatives as to where they should go and those sorts of things. So that's really good. One of the key things, and it's identified on page 438, item 16 there, where the major gap, the significant gap, it was in the provision of affordable, smaller, quality houses at a price point that's achievable to afford housing stress. And currently at the moment, the market isn't providing those. So having this action plan, which covers and complements the spatial plan, it also complements other initiatives that are taking place as well. And the spatial plan sort of recommends or makes some direction, if you like, on opportunity 4 of the spatial plan. But look, this is really, really good. I know in April the GCP's meeting to look at priorities, and in a way, having this action plan is almost saying we're ready to go on developing some strategies to implement in certain spots. So it's really good to see.
Thank you, Genevieve. And then Councillor Karakia after that.
I think it's a really, really good plan. But on page 437, when it discusses some official figures that are absent from homelessness, overcrowding, and inappropriate housing, such as camping grounds, I would really have liked to have seen information on that if it came somehow. And also the numbers on people requiring perhaps temporary portable housing, such as houses on wheels or similar, for desperate situations like they're doing on some modelling in the States and other countries at the moment. I would have really liked to have seen that within there, because we've got a lot of land available at the moment in the red zone and a lot of people needing housing. It would have been cool to see something. No, that could be something we look at in the future, but yeah, just an idea.
Thank you, Councillor Karakia.
Kia ora, ko whakahaere. So just sort of carrying on from the initial introduction sort of part of this, and Lucy, kia ora to you. And what's really interesting here in this whole report is that we're hearing a lot about kāinga nohoanga, and then in your response just before, you quoted Jane Huria, and I've got a lot of respect for Jane, and she does great work. But you did say that they are actually, are working on this whole idea about trying to house more mana whenua Māori, because for Māori it's a real travesty, as you'll probably know. But one of the biggest issues, and we talk about the spatial plan, it's actually about, and I don't see a lot of it being mentioned in the report, and as you said, it might come later, but there is offset boundaries that we have to deal with. There's a whole thing about Māori land tenure, because we can't get off first base to be talking about a house if we actually haven't got the whenua part of it, because you need somewhere to put it, and particularly on Māori land. So hopefully there's quite a bit of work that's actually going to be undertaken, and this report will act as a kind of a catalyst for that, for Māori land, Māori whenua, and also trying to sort out, and I know they keep saying that it's up to us to do that, but then we all have to default back to the Crown, the Ministry of Justice under the Māori Land Court, Māori Development and all of that. But they've got to actually have some leadership from the regions. And so hopefully you've got a bit of positiveness as to you got one good person kind of in there like Jane Hoodia, but who else is actually being involved in this? I know that you've quoted there's all these kind of representatives of Māori there, but specifically say in Selwyn, obviously you're probably going to Taumutu and all of that. There's others out there though that I think are really important to actually engage with to try and get this thing moving around Māori housing. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Price. We take all those as rhetorical questions rather than questions to be answered in this forum.
Oh, question. I'll give you a question then. Okay, Chair, I'll give you a question. I'll give you a question. Is that so? What's happening in that space other than just quoting one person and also saying that it's going to come later?
So we've gone past that point where we can ask questions. The staff are no longer at the table, Councillor Price. Unfortunately, you can't see that. But let's take this up. I think you made some valid points there. I think Jane is the natural conduit for those conversations, to proceed, and maybe even Lucy and myself and you and Jane can get together and have a conversation about that. Not just missing you at all.
I thought they were still there. Thank you.
In terms of standing orders, that's where we're at. So if there's no one else, I'll put this motion to you. So all those in favour, please say aye. All those against. That's carried. And thank you very much, Lucy, and thank you, Jess, for that piece of work that's been done.
Mr. Chair, just with the agenda and the way it sits at the moment, and with our guests who are here predominantly for the 8.6 report, I wonder if we can, with lunch on the horizon, amend the agenda to pull forward 8.6 to have that item now so that our guests don't have to wait, too much longer.
I'm open to that suggestion. Somebody like, everyone seems to be reasonably comfortable with that. You don't need to do anything specifically mechanical around it. And I understand clearly you want to get a photo, Heather. You want to get a photo. That's okay. As long as we don't get staff on it. Staff and photos. But, yeah. All right, let's go to 8.6. This is not for you. It's not even for any of you. Okay. So 8.6 is response to the notice of motion procurement policy on page 488 of the agenda, and Brian's Chief Financial Officer introduced this report. Council has had this report, and so this is just highlighting the issue and also welcome table Giles and here in finance.
Fundamentally, this paper is just the result of investigation into the possibility of how we support United Nations Security Council Resolution 2334 regarding the Palestinian territories. Fundamentally, we have landed on the recommendation that we're able to include in our procurement policy the statement that we will, where possible, not trade with any of the 97 remaining organisations on the UN blacklist, except for where the exceptional circumstances arise which would have significant detriment to Environment Canterbury itself. We also note that Environment Canterbury does not currently trade with any of these organisations, so we're looking at it purely from future tender opportunities which we will be offering into the market. The scope of this also does not include lower stages in our supply chain beyond direct trading with specific suppliers of the organisations. And please also note impacts advice to make in the paper, which largely needed to the council to determine how best
best to deal with this issue. All right, so that's, you've got the paper. Are there questions around the paper that you need clarification on? And the process that we use here is this is where clarification is sought. When we ask the staff to step back from the table, then it becomes a discussion amongst councillors. And once the resolution is closed, then councillors can discuss that. So, questions, gentlemen.
I've just got a recommendation, or actually a concern about the recommendations, as in 5, with the exception being approved by the chief executive. I'm wondering if that could be either put separately or altered. I do not support that section. Sorry. Yeah, just the process around that. What is the, I guess, why the exception with the chief executive, considering the importance of the procurement?
That's simply anticipating that there may be a situation arise here of particularly crucial or important environment to trade for a particular organisation under exceptional circumstances. But yeah.
What would be considered exceptional, I guess?
So we don't currently trade any of the companies on the list. We're trying to future-proof that there may be a situation, for example, in new or emerging technology that would be appropriate for us to include on a tender list in exceptional circumstances, and that's why we are recommending that exception needs to be approved by the chief executive in person rather than any other lower list. Current time, we do not foresee the situation where that would arise, but clearly we're trying to future-proof the procurement policy for all eventually.
Kia ora, thanks, Mr. Chair. Look, my question follows on from that. So, given that that statement, does that mean there's a risk to the duty of care that we are required to provide to our one and only employee, the CE? I'm just trying to make sure I understand that procurement is an operational activity. I have no problem with that, but we have a duty of care to our one employee, and given that potentially this could be politicised, I'm just wondering, is that a possibility?
I think yes, it is a possibility. We need to consider that reasonably seriously, actually, because we've become at odds with this. Yes, Greg.
I'm not sure how this works, but is it worth making an amendment to 5, which says, with any exception being approved by the chief executive and chairperson, or chairperson of audit, risk and finance, given that procurement falls within that area? As a safeguard, again, this is about our duty of care to the CEO.
Okay, so look, how I wouldn't mind progressing this is if we split these up, take the top 4, and then we can talk about the 5th one if councillors are happy with that. That gets the majority of the stuff over the line. If councillors are happy with that. Councillor Karakia, you have your hand up.
Kia ora, Chair. It was Councillor Burns that brought up a point that I wanted to make, because if the duty of care to our CEO, that's not clear here in some ways. And my suggestion is that we need to look at possibly the chair of the audit financial risk to actually be included in that as well, because then we've got a more direct relationship also with the governance side of us. And I know it's operational, I get that. But when we're talking about this kind of thing, under really exceptional circumstances, I think that it needs to get elevated further up.
I think he's still going there. But I think this raises a reasonably interesting issue, because what we're talking about here now, when we get to 5, let's talk about when we get to 5. Let's get this. Can we get these 4 out of the way? Are these standard and straightforward enough to get out of the road first? Okay, moved by Councillor Burns and seconded by Councillor Robinson. Well, did you want to speak?
I had another a question. I had a question on that, so I'll just stop. Just can I ask the question? Is that the right time to do it now? So really, just I mean that 0.5. Would another option be to, given that we are expecting this to be under really exceptional circumstances, not common, unlikely even, that it could come back to council for a decision? But that's my question though. Oh, you want to do questions separately in part? Okay, I'll ask the question.
No. Yeah, we'll take 1 to 4 together and then we can have the big discussion about 5, right? Well, we'll have the question about 5 when we get to 5, if that's okay. Does that satisfy what you're trying to do?
Yeah, I want to make sure I get my question in the right place, because sometimes it turns into discussion and then the question moment has been passed and then I don't get the answers I need to be able to.
So, you can ask your question about 5. Is there any further discussion on this? If there's no further discussion, I'll put back to you, beat 1 to 4. All those in favour of that, you say aye. All those against? Aye. Now, it's carried. Now, taking your question.
So, there's some concern around 5 in terms of who takes responsibility in the special circumstances that are exceptional. And from the sort of bits of discussion and questions today, has been around what combination of people do we put into that decision, ultimate decision-making responsibility? And I'm asking, actually, is there an opportunity here to bring it back to full council when, though, if and when that set of circumstances occurs, and then it's sort of spread across everybody, and it's a full council decision.
So I think it's recognising Councillor Burns' comment that procurement is an operational responsibility of the organisation. What we are attempting to do in the recommendation is to respond to the notice of motion, but recognising that there may be exceptional circumstances, but also recognising that the business needs to be carried on in an efficient and timely manner. And so that's why we were recommending that Chief Executive was the exception route, given that it would be an extremely high bar, from our perspective, but also recognising that we, as suggested, we may want to include an appropriate member of council in that conversation. I think it would be, on occasions, if we were to try to exercise the exception, challenging from a timeliness basis to bring it back to full council.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I do recognise the risk if that delegation purely sits with the Chief Executive, and we're talking about an exceptional circumstance. So my belief is at some point we do need a governance representative in that space. Positive that it may be the Chair of Audit and Risk. Will the Chair of Audit and Risk be an elected member or an appointed member or an independent member into the future? I don't know. So there's a question there. Do they represent the values of the council sitting here? So my thoughts would be it would be on advice, given the political risk that might sit there, sitting with the Chair of Environment Canterbury for that conversation with the Chief Executive if we were to go down that line. I think we could have all manner of a conversation and arguments butt our heads at a full conference at a table, Chief Executive and the Chair managing the political risk of having a conversation that they may well then decide to bring to council if they are uncomfortable with it my way. Thank you.
Look, we've got a couple of things here that are procedural, and they're about the pain, but we've got 5 minutes left and we need to take a break, and I would like to extend it the time that we're discussing this, so we've got some continuity here. Would someone like to move that we do that? So thank you, Jim B, and thank you, Greg. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Look, I think we need to have these guys at the table for this discussion because there are some things here that we need to try and unpick, and they are the advice. These are the people that are involved with the procurement policy and the clear.
Yeah, I think there is a degree of chief executive in this situation, but I am really concerned about the politicizing of any decision that may be requiring the future. So I am quite supportive that it is an individual, and I think that you, the chair, is their highest government person. So I'd like to see, if there was to be a change, that the chair was there as well as the chief executive. I do not think that we should actually be bringing them back to our political table, so a full political table for a decision.
Councillor Karakia.
Kia ora. After Councillor Sunkel's input into this, and now Councillor Mackay, I actually agree with that way forward. Is that I actually agree, not the chair of the audit and risk and finance. I mean, it's more around elevating it right up there to the chair in conjunction with the CEO. Thank you. I support that.
Okay, thank you. Is anybody else want to have a say about this? This is obviously not going to stand because it's the way it is in terms of discussion. It needs to have some alteration made procedurally. How do we do that? We just make an alteration to it, or we put a new motion up? We just have this defeated and how do we do that? All right, let's have it.
Chairman, I'd be happy to propose an amendment to the 5, which should deal with this issue, and it's not quite in line with the way John is proposing, but it actually does deal with the issue. Well, I'm proposing that we, instead of approving the way it's written, we're just saying note United Nations Security Council Resolution 2374, and where appropriate, give effect to that resolution on our procurement process. It gives a fair degree of latitude to our operational team as to purchase.
Sorry, I can see heaps of hands up, but we have a motion that's been moved and seconded. So we'll deal with that first. Councillor Karakia, Councillor Pauling and Councillor Edge. Do you want to come down here and put that so we know what we're talking about? That doesn't seem to work. Lisa. Lisa. Can you come down here? Just bear with us. All right, so what we need to do with, and sorry, bear with me down the far end of the room. This is procedural stuff that we need to follow in terms of our standing orders. And progress around some of these things sometimes is glacial, so we're going quick. So we just have to get through this. Is that it? All right, Councillor McKenzie.
Well, it seems to me, as has been made clear, that if we make it too complicated, the onus then becomes on our staff to have translators. Now, the staff have made it clear that this is an operational issue, and so what I'm trying to do is say, do the virtue signaling, which is what's required, which is the purpose of this whole debate, but in fact give the discretion to the staff without, so they can administer the policy as they deem fit.
I'm comfortable with narrative.
All right. It's we have a mover and seconder. Anyone else want to speak to this particular motion? Can you guys just take your hands down until we deal with this motion? I know you're all there, so we'll get back to you.
Yeah, I'd like to speak to it, Peter.
I want to speak to that motion.
I'm the same.
We didn't even have it up on the board. Go ahead. Karakia first, and then Pauling, and then East.
Look, I continue to support the governor, a representative of the governors, which we're suggesting the chair to have oversight on this, and also working in with the CE as a collective rangatira, two rangatira actually making that decision. I don't believe that it actually stays with an operational official. I think it needs actually a governance official as well. So the two highest ones there, that's why I'm supporting it.
Councillor Pauling, and then Councillor East.
Yeah, kia ora. Just speaking to this motion, I don't support this amendment, but I would like to foreshadow a further amendment if this one fails. Thank you.
Councillor Edge.
Yes, I don't support this motion at all. It's vague, and who determines the appropriateness of this motion? Whereas the original 5 was completely clear. It approved an amendment to the procurement policy. All we're talking about is Councillor Karakia suggested that we modify that, perhaps Chief Executive in liaison with the chair. That's all that needed to be. Just a small amendment to make it very clear. But I certainly don't agree with this proposed amendment.
Yeah, thank you. So are there others that want to speak to this? And this is pretty straightforward. You either agree with this or you don't agree with it. So I don't think we don't need to go on about this. So I'll call for, it's been moved by Councillor McKenzie and seconded by Councillor East. All those in favour, please say aye. All those against?
Aye.
Are you happy with the fact that that doesn't seem to be supported? So there we are. It hasn't been supported, so that resolution failed. Now, I know that you've foreshadowed something, Councillor Pauling, but you have to get in line behind Councillor Sunkel.
Yes, that's fine. Thank you.
Okay, good. Councillor Sunkel.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. If we go back to 5, the initial one, I would just simply like the addition of, with any exception being approved by the Chief Executive in liaison with the Chair of Environment Canterbury.
It's been moved by Councillor Sunkel. Have we got a seconder for that? So Councillor Burns. There's a bit of detail going into this, but you're happy to second it, Councillor Burns? Okay, anybody, anyone want to speak to that?
Sorry. It's all good.
Yes, please, Peter. Just to say that I support that. I think it reflects the majority of the debate that we've had, and I think number 5 is a really good resolution with this amendment. Thank you.
Councillor Sweet.
Can I just clarify the procedure from here? So we'll be voting on the amendment, and then we'll be voting that determines the substantive amendment based on that. Is that correct?
Let's get this across the line, and then that becomes part of substantive motion, and then we can speak to that. Thank you for checking. Somebody else has got a hand up online, Grant.
Yep. Sorry, I support the motion.
Cool, thank you.
Amendment.
Councillor Rocco, have you got your hand up? Can't see you.
Sorry, Chair. Yes, I'll support this motion as well. Thank you.
All right, there doesn't seem to be much. Let's turn the microphone in. Thank you. All right. So there it is. It's stood. All those in favour of that motion, please say aye.
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 All those, that's carried. Now that becomes a substantive motion. So there's somebody agree. So that now becomes the substantive motion. And we need a mover for that substantive motion.
Happy to move. Craig.
I'll second Grant.
got it. Genevieve and Craig. Genevieve and Craig. Councillor Burns. So discussion around that. Any discussion around that? Anyone want to speak to it? Councillor Burns.
Yes,
Oh. Hey, tie ho there, Grant.
yeah.
Won't be just COVID. Keeps it home. Can I just thank everyone who has turned up today. Thank you very much. I know you've waited a long time. I really do appreciate you making the effort to get here. And in my opinion, this is great. I'd like to thank both Councillor Sunkel and also Councillor Karakia, because again, it is a requirement for this duty of care to our one and only staff member. And again, the staff, thank you very much. I really do appreciate the fact that you've gone into this and got this through. Thank you.
Councillor McKenzie.
Just from an integrity.
Councillor Burns.
I'm going to speak. I'm going to vote against this motion, simply because in my own businesses we use TripAdvisor, Booking.com, and JCB, and I can't support a motion which tells this council not to trade with those companies when I do it myself.
Thank you. Councillor Edge.
Thanks, Chair. I just really wanted to refer to page 490 and the comments of items 17 and 18 about risk assessment and legal compliance. In my opinion, in terms of number 17, I think the whole point of the United Nations resolution is to consider humanity over any cost implications or the inability through a procurement process to assess innovative technology. Not supporting a business that continues to engage in globally recognized abusive activity becomes the economic catalyst for a business to stop the practice, hopefully. Clause 18, I'm concerned that the economic risk has been given more weight than the guidance provided by the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and Trade in attachment 8.6.2 regarding financial, reputational, and legal and liabilities for procuring goods provided by corporate involvement in gross human rights abuses. So I think that our resolution, I'm certainly supporting it, in that it kind of hopefully will address those humanity issues and address the legal risks in terms of having the CE and the chair collaborating or liaising with each other to make a really good judgment on what we do about these issues. Thanks.
Thank you, Grant. So we've got Councillor Sweets, and then I'm going to bring this to a conclusion with Councillor Pauling, and then the last voice will be Councillor Robinson. That's the mover.
Yeah, I just wanted to say that I'll support it. Thanks, Greg, for bringing this to the table. My partner and family are Muslim, and they, in their through this entire thing, we've brought this to the table. In fact, it's been quite a lot of issues around what's going on there. So it's in terms of what Councillor and Mackenzie said, and the list of the companies, I too looked at those companies and I was like, goodness gracious, I used those companies before. Airbnb, Booking.com, TripAdvisor. But I'm not going to not, there's a whole lot of them. Expedia, I've used that before as well. But I'm not going to not support this because for me, it's opened up my eyes to who is those companies. And I can make that decision to change who I use. And I hope that it raises awareness to other people in the communities and out there that there are companies that we do use on day-to-day stuff that are there. It's up to them whether they want to use it or not, but I'm quite keen to push this through and set that time. Thank you.
Councillor Pauling, and then finally Councillor Robinson.
Oh, kia ora koutou. Look, I don't need to say much more. I think it's a really good paper, really good outcome. Thank Councillor Burns for bringing this to us and acknowledge the supporters in the room for this. Kia ora, thank you.
What an amazing conversation from everybody. I strongly support Councillor Burns. He had courage like no other at the time, and it is a really big thing on the agenda at the moment. And as Councillor Swiggs mentioned, the list is quite large of all the people trading in illegal Israeli settlements with Israeli settlements, right? So yeah, I too have opened up my eyes, and I won't be supporting a lot of those groups there. A lot of them are international groups, but some of them are, you know, firm in their country. But yeah, I just wanted to say thank you, Councillor Burns, for bringing it to the table. I strongly support it, and I think you're very courageous for doing this, and the people in the background here. Without it, yeah, thank you.
All right, thank you. Look, can I just put this to you that the substantive motion moved by Councillor Robinson, seconded by Councillor Pauling. All those in favour, please say aye. All those against, and that's carried. So thank you for that. And you're an abstention. You're a no. You two no's, or what? You're a no, and Councillor East. You're a no. Thank you. So that'll be no. I should have released you earlier, guys. So thank you. Thank you everyone for their patience. Look, we'll come back here at 1:10, and we're going to start with PX at 1:10. The two people that are attending PX, the two first issues on those have got flights out of here, or one of them's got a flight out of here that we need to attend to. So thank you very much. We're adjourned till 10:10. Okay, councillors, we're now back in session on this in the general open part of the meeting, and we are to move into public excluded. We need a mover and a seconder to do that. Moved by Councillor Sunkel, or moved by Councillor Robinson, seconded by Councillor Sunkel. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
All those against. Now that's carried. Now,
okay, fundamentally, this is a report about renewing the reserves policy. It is an important policy and is required under our schedule to be updated every 3 years. It has been presented and reviewed at the AFRC's last meeting with extensive discussion. It is, interestingly enough, not a requirement for inclusion in the LGP process, as it's not mentioned or referred to in the Local Government Act at this point. So, but it may influence future decision making regarding annual plans and long-term plans. At that point, yes, the reserves which it refers to in the document were largely covered in LTP terms and financial briefings pre-Christmas, and it was noted at that time that further work was yet to be done, which is referred to again in this particular document. There are currently no financial impacts from this particular paper, depending upon what decisions the council may or may not determine that they should make as part of the long-term plan or future annual plan. So, questions on that, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I note on page 461 that we determine as target reserves. So they are not a hard and fast number, but a target. And I presume from that is if we need to dip into the civil defence or transport or whatever, it may well drop below, and that the economic cycle then in the process will build. So there were some questions: are these hard and fast, or they are targets that we aspire to over time? So that's the correct assumption?
Yes, I mean essentially they're there for the purposes of dipping into at the appropriate time. And you will notice in the policy it does explicitly say that it's subject to whatever council decisions and economic conditions, etc., apply at the time. So, yeah.
Just to follow up, we note on the Waimakariri, due to the debt of that scheme, we do not have a reserve. And again, there's been questions: why do we not have a reserve? But I would again presumptive that the repaying of debt is the most important piece of work. Bring us back to balance, and then in time to rebuild. It starts to gain that assumption.
Yes, that would be correct. Obviously, having the debt outstanding has an interest cost to it, so the best application of funds at this point is to try and retire the debt as soon as possible.
I'm just wondering whether there is some confusion, or I'm confused, around the reserves, said reserves, for the secondary spot bank on the Waimakiriri versus the Waimakiriri air cust, which I understand is the one that's required for 9.1 mil. Is that, am I correct in understanding the rest food?
So it explicitly separates out the Waimakiriri because of the large impact on the overall flood defence reserve. So the others are all aggregated.
Firstly, just confirm that the property development reserve falls in the same type of category as the one clearly. Yeah, so that's being paid back and then listed. And then under point 11 on page 462, there's a comment that says at some future point the council will potentially have insufficient borrowing headroom to respond to unexpected events or shocks if the reserves are not replenished. But what is our headroom currently? Like, how much could we borrow at the present time if we should need to?
The current headroom is, I believe you can borrow up to 2.8 times our total income, so it will be in the range of $700 million. So obviously it's a long way down the track before we get to
that. Actually, a very long way down the track, unless something really terrible happens. So in the grand scheme of things, when you then look at that in comparison with where our reserves are sitting, not really much. We don't really need to panic just yet. We can work out a strategy to build those reserves, like we're also working through what's been a really quite astonishing period of inflation. So we've got some ability to fund.
Hi, thanks. Thanks for the mention of the this policy putting aside the LTP, but from a decision-making point of view, and here and in the lead up to doing the LTP adoption, it makes a heck of a lot more sense to do this, approve this before we go and approve the LTP document, because this is an older document from the last council that was kind of carried over and now we're just approving this. Is there any reason why we aren't doing it alongside the LTP? Because I know you're saying it's not part of the LGNZ XYZ, but is there any logical reason why?
At this point, it really just goes through the 3-year cycle, and fundamentally, council can make any decision. It doesn't have to stick to, as John was alluding to, stick to these limits. These are kind of guidelines which help you make those decisions, but you should still be visiting those decisions as part of the LTP process.
Oh, I mean, because I mean, the reason I'm asking this is clause 4 talks about the reserves of the states, and if they fall below the minimum levels, the aim is to restore them over the following 3 years. But that takes an LTP process to put those limits back in for the funding that we do to go into these reserves. I'm not convinced personally that we've got the timing of doing this correct. I think it could be done better. And that's, and actually I've got a whole lot of other questions, but that's the most important thing in my opinion, because then these other questions that I have would actually fit into the whole process that we're doing around LTP, and then it all lands together.
Bearing in mind that we can and have done reset our reserve retention as part of the annual plan as well. So it's not purely restricted to the LTP 3 years.
I completely agree with the councillor's comment. I think that at any point there's a challenge in terms of the cycle of when decisions are made. So as you said, Brian has said, was it 2 years ago? Council made a commitment, given the level of reserves, to replenish $2.4 to $2.5 million a year for 5 years to try and get the general reserve back up. there have been subsequent decisions to reduce that, to reframe that in the context of the economic circumstances, the work program and the investment program. So I think the reserve targets are really to provide that framework and help inform those decisions going forward. As Brian said, we have brought on a number of occasions the reserve as part of financial briefings in the lead up to the LTP. We will also again bring that up because at the moment the current consultation document does include rates to replenish reserves by the tune of 2.4 million. That clearly has to be part of your consideration, recognising the financial sustainability of the organisation in the context of the work programme, in the context of the economic scenarios, in the context of the borrowing headroom that we have, in the context of interest rates, etc., etc.
So there is no reason why we can't do it. I want to know clearly, there is no reason why we can't do it before the LTP, the 3-year review of this, to streamline it into the LTP process. Just in the future, maybe.
To say one of the reasons that we felt it was appropriate to review it in the context of this 3 years since it has been reviewed, new council giving visibility. One of the reasons that Brian and I put the recommendation in was to note that there will be further work done that we're looking at early in 24-25 is to reframe how we present the reserves, so we're really clear about which ones are recognising the debt that needs to be repaid, which ones are actually balancing accounting entries, and which ones are actual reserves to support the work, but also to be clearer about the cycle that could be performed to exactly what you said.
Few people here. Cycle Mackay Edge and they're falling.
Thank you. I understand, Councillor Swiggs, where you're coming from, but I guess our reserves are that suspension that allows us the flexibility to move when incidents happen. And I think of civil defence, if we went out and spent $1 million tomorrow, that does not follow a planning cycle for the reinvestment or planning around your long-term planning. Equally, when we had issues with our transport and needed to dip into those reserves for bus drivers and a bunch of other things, it's not a binary gate. This is what we'll do in a regulated space. So I understand the sentiment, but it's really the opportunity within the annual plans to then revise what we need to do to replenish those reserves for the next incident that comes along.
Notwithstanding just what John said, I do support. I would have supported, and I would encourage the council in the future to be thinking about this in alignment with a long-term plan. I actually have some real concerns around the way that some of us councillors sitting at the table approach this reserve. I mean, it is a liquidity situation, and Councillor Sankey just outlined the need for them. So it does concern me that we are not consistent with our policy currently. So the risks around that are really what concern me. Having said that, I will support the paper, but I would like staff to consider perhaps taking some of the commentary out of the old policy with regard to the reserves and having some sort of addendum to the current new one that's proposed.
Bridge.
Thanks, Chair. Just a question, Brian, just to confirm the 2.4 or Giles, the 2.4 million per year per annum for 5 years, that's currently budgeted for in the current LTP process. Is that right?
That's correct.
Okay. And what we're seeing here is really just an assessment of the situation that tells us that this system needs a bit more of a review and a bit more thinking. And that's the objective of this, is to daylight some of these things so that we can go forward and discuss them a bit more. What do you think your time frame? You talked about early 24, 25, no, or 20, yeah, late 24, 25. Is that where you were thinking to come back with a a review?
We'd be looking at the end of the first quarter. Yeah, so probably reporting to the AFRC at the next meeting after that.
Right, and that would then be a bit more ready for annual plan processes, like you said before.
Yes. Getting a nodding of the head there, Grant.
Okay.
So there's an agreement there. All right.
Yeah, cool. Thanks.
Craig.
Yeah, kia ora. Yeah, I'm really confused about this one. And I still don't understand it. Just been with my first statement. So I find it really hard to approve a new policy, a revised policy, when we haven't had a sort of lead into it and don't know much about it. And I'm going to ask my fellow councillors on AFRC, what was your recommendation about this in your meeting? Do you recommend that we approve this policy? That's one question. But I note that there's no financial impacts right now at this day. But Brian, you've noted that depending on what decisions we make in the LTP, there might be, and that's my real concern. Is I just not happy to make a decision now on the new policy that then binds us if we make a certain decision. So my question is, will we be made aware of what decisions during our deliberations will impact this policy? Are we going to be, and how are we going to be made aware of that?
Effectively, the decisions related to this would be if council decided to change the level of replenishment of the reserves, in particular, the $2.4 million a year, should it decide to reallocate that to another purpose, or if council decided to increase the level of replenishment. Those are really the two major decisions which would make as part of the LTP, other than also deciding to perhaps run a deficit budget, which of course is not a viable option. So,
okay. So I think, Craig, I appreciate the question. Fundamentally, the policy hasn't changed. So the policy was consistent with the approach taken to AFRC for extensive conversation, and AFRC recommendation to AFRC was that they recommended approval to this committee. That was the intent of the way the paper was presented, acknowledging that the recommendation doesn't make it absolutely crystal clear that the recommendation from AFRC is approved. It is about providing that frame for the level of financial reserves that are prudent, given a number of criteria. For example, we've talked extensively in the past about the level of public transport reserve really being there to allow us to step in should an operator not be able to provide services at short notice. The general reserves are based on a number of days or weeks of costs going out of the organisation. So there is a basis for calculating the target level. You will notice if you look at the balance as at the 30th of June, our current general reserves are in deficit. So we are running an overdraft in effect. And that is why council made the decision to replenish over 5 years. But subsequently decisions have been made to use that or to scale that back, etc. You'll also notice that our public transport reserves are above target level due to the impact of government policy decisions on half-price fares, and that is then reflected in decisions that have been made around fare trials and which will be brought through. So it's really, it doesn't require the council to make any decisions as a result of this policy paper. What it does is set a frame for those discussions going forward, and further information will be provided as part of the input and information as you deliberate through the LTP, which, as Brian has said, already includes the 2.5 million, 4 million per annum over the next 3 years, I think, for general reserve replenishment.
Can I just have a follow-up question, Peter?
Oh, you go.
Well, actually, just a bit of I actually support what Claire said too about the the commentary in the old policy. I actually find that really helpful, so you can understand why the policies are set the way they are. And it was really tricky to follow because there was no track changes. Like you had to read, flick down and flick back up to see what had changed in the policy. But those bold statements in the older policy I quite like. I support that. So thank you.
Right. Grant.
Sorry, just to answer Craig's question from before, and if you look at page 65 of this agenda, it has the resolutions. The resolutions were passed by the AFRC committee. It was Councillor Mackenzie, Councillor Sunkel, signatories to that, and it was carried. But there was a note on there as well that the committee requested that there were concerns over a number of categories of reserves, and that currently the council holds only 17% of the proposed reserve target. So we're well under, but the whole point of this is to be able to move forward and come up with a bit more of a better quality reserves package as soon as we can. But I think I agree now that the comments from Councillor Mackay about having a bit of a narrative. So maybe we just note that request for staff in the review process to include a bit more of a narrative on the financial reserves.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Councillor Reg has reiterated the point that there was the recommendation of the Canterbury Regional Council adopt the revised reserves policy February 2024 from the Board of Listing.
Well, I agree with John and Grant in terms of the discussion around the AFRC, but I just wanted to talk specifically about the river flood protection reserves, and that is the level of those reserves have all been agreed to by the individual river rating schemes or flood protection schemes, and usually involved around some proportion of their annual expenditure as a prudent way of keeping their finances in a way state that they can respond to an emergency. And I've asked questions before as to why, and the only river rating scheme where I think in the LTP where we haven't followed the advice of the respective liaison committee is actually to the Wainau, and that's probably where the biggest hole in our reserve sits in terms of flood protection. So I'm still not sure who made that unilateral decision not to follow the recommendations of the liaison committee, specifically in the Wainau river rating scheme. But apart from that, so to go to Craig's question, what support has it got? Certainly for the flood protection stuff, which is a significant part of our reserves, that has all been okayed by the relevant communities behind those flood protection schemes.
Thank you. Look, my question around this was the 17% because I think that it's just too low from my point of view. However, I do understand how we've got to where we've got to. Outside the LTP process, there needs to be a mechanism where we can get access to money. And a classic case in point is our consent officers that we've applied money to. So those things do come along. And I think, you know, the organisation needs to be able to access money when it's required. And, you know, if you're in business, it's like if an environmental issue comes along in business, you've got to spend the money. You can't actually long-term do it.
Just wanted to comment, just to give some context for the 17%, which I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, is on page 462, which is the 8.9 million over 51.85 million in the table. That's one of the drivers for us to want to be clearer about the presentation, because that I think is not a true reflection it does reflect the fact that there is significant debt in the Waima. And so we're in effect conflating a couple of different issues. And so that's one of the reasons we want to look more systemically at what are the reserves and how we present them, present the truer picture about what cash do we have, what borrowing do we have. I think the reason that the WIMAC reserve is target instead of zero is because of the extent of the debt. Setting a target, positive target would kind of be unachievable in the short to medium term, given that we've got that debt and reflecting those two things in the way that this is being presented. So again, this is what we want to look at. So how do we make this much clearer for the councillors and have a clearer picture about how are we sitting in terms of cash that we're holding, borrowing that we've got. Some of the things that are actually accounting entries, like asset replacement reserve, it's like really just accounting entries as a result of double entry, and in a sense improving the way that we present it going forward.
Look, I don't know if we need any more further discussion about this. It's put it top of mind for us to have a conversation about this amongst ourselves, and be fairly informed, I guess, and look for the way forward. So that's the motion here. I don't know if we need to unpack any of that. If someone would like to move that.
I'll move, Chair.
Thank you, Grant. Seconded by Councillor Sankle, moved by Councillor Eve, seconded by Councillor Sankle. Any further discussion on that issue? Being no further discussion, all those in favour, please say aye. All those against, aye. And that is carried. And thank you very much for the inquiry around that from the councillors. Now we move to 8.6. Is it? 7.
Oh, Peter. I'd like to vote against that. Thanks.
Oh, okay. So thank you, Craig. So
Thanks.
Craig's voting against that. Craig's a no. So 8.2. You've been so patient. And David also. David.
Anita's from Otago Regional Council, and they are also voting on this at their council meeting and at any moment now. So she's just popping in to see how we're going. What are Anita? Okay. And so I'm pretty excited to bring this paper to you today because it represents an opportunity to work in partnership and across boundaries to allow the Waitaki River catchment to be managed holistically as one catchment. And before I jump into the background to this paper, I'd just like to correct an error in paragraph 3, where it states that discussions were held at Te Rapitoria and Manatamana for the Te Runanga o Otako. That should be Waitaki, not Otako. Apologies there. But as the paper states, and as was previously discussed at Te Rapitoria, which the paper's appended to your report here, the 3 iwi groups in the southern part of Canterbury, Te Runanga o Waitaki, Te Runanga o Arawhenua and Te Runanga o Waiho, whose takiwa include the Waitaki River, have approached Environment Canterbury and Otago Regional Council to ask if they could consider jointly developing a more holistic approach to managing the Waitaki River for audit quality and quantity purposes. It's been through been to Te Rapitoria and to the Otago equivalent, Manatamana, and it's now been brought to respective councils for formal consideration. The concept has still got a lot of fleshing out to do. There's quite a lot of legislative hurdles in place towards holistic management of the catchment. However, we see this as an opportunity to do some really strong scoping in a Runanga-led project that could lead to a lot more certainty for resource users by having information in one place and one area that they can go to look for answers to their resource management questions. That's probably as much as the background. I think the rest of the paper is read.
Thank you, Zella. David, you reckon to add to that? Nothing to add to that. So we'll do this the normal way. So any clarification? What do you want to do? Oh no, that's cool. That's called low traffic optimal, actually. So we'll do this the normal way. So questions of clarification from staff. then we'll get him to sit back and then we can have a discussion on that process. So Councillor Southwood, followed by Councillor McKenzie, Councillor Mackay, Councillor Sankel, Councillor Peace.
Yeah, thank you. I was thinking of a map of the area, and I'm just wondering firstly how many hydro schemes are in Otago compared with Canterbury? Are there any that are outside of?
No, they also within the Canterbury boundary, within that Waitaki district.
And also, and then it mentions that the majority of the catch, I can see from the map, majority is like also the area is also in Canterbury. But do you know how much proportion or what the area difference is between Otago and Canterbury?
No, I don't. I can find that out for you, but Anita may know.
Thanks, I've got a few questions and comments which I'd like to make later. But the first question I would like to ask now.
We can't hear anything.
Nita, did you want to reply to that? Did you want to say something?
No, I wasn't going to be able to
Oh, well,
provide anybody helpful.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I've got several questions, comments I'm going to make later, but just the first question is why is the motion that's in front of the Otago Regional Council, I think, significantly different to the one we had in front of us?
I was not aware that they were significantly different as we based them on the same paper.
Ours is asking approval to the person with as a whole by the Canterbury Regional Council, Otago, and with various women. But the Otago one is approved commencing work to understand how the Waitaki River catchment could be managed as a whole. That's the first point. And then it directs staff to work with ECAM through the groups to develop next steps to report back to the council. So there's a significant difference in the purpose of the two motions. And yet they can't be voting on the same thing.
I wasn't aware that they'd become different through the processing through our different review processes. So I do apologise for that, but I think the concept remains the same in terms of an opportunity to scope out the way that we might work together to manage the catchment holistically in the partnership between the Runanga and the councils.
Thank you. I have several questions. Can I give them one after the other? Or, on the clarification, of course, around financials, we don't have any information that's still to come. I've read the Waitaki Act and understand the basis of how the allocation was formed in there. What's the potential cost of going down this route versus going down what I understand is potentially a more complex route? So I'm not sure if you can answer that.
No, I can't answer that at this time.
It notes that on point 7, applications from the hydro scheme have been lodged with us. Are they currently being processed or are they waiting until this piece of work?
No, they aren't waiting on this piece of work. They aren't waiting on this piece of work.
And the other thing is that it's been brought to our attention that to Rapatuya, this paper was brought. The papers aren't quite exactly the same. And you've just mentioned that this is around being a Runanga-led project. Those words aren't actually in here anywhere. And I think it's probably what's leading to a little bit of uncertainty around some of our heads here. And I'm just wondering whether you might like to tease that out a little bit better, given what it actually says in point 13. Well, I think it is a
question of clarity.
It is a question of clarity because in speaking to the paper, our staff has mentioned that this is a Runanga-led project. And I guess the point is that we have some other examples, well, at least one example that's not going too well right at the moment because we're not bringing the wider community in. And I think we need some understanding around that as well. Perhaps I think, perhaps you don't need to answer it. I think it probably goes back to the point that's been raised today by several other councillors around other papers, and it's around, have we had a briefing that actually tells us where all these pieces of the jigsaw fit together to go forward? I'll just make that.
Peter, can I have a point of clarification?
So yeah, well, the answer to that, Councillor McCoy, is no. So what's the clarification that you're going to give us, right?
Oh, the way I read the paper, the resolution is to set about a process so we can understand it better. So I don't really get all the questions because the resolution is quite simple. It's agree to commence the work to find out how we can all work together. So all of the questions that people have will be answered through that process, surely. So I just don't get how we can be picking into it. Yeah,
I agree. Look, this is not a question itself, right? This is something you need to put on the table once we've solved all the clarity that we need around this. And I know that Zella might have to say no, she doesn't know, but then we can have a discussion about it. Right? So we've got Councillor Sunkel.
Given your thoughts, I'm not sure where to go. Having been on the Upper Waitaki Zone Committee for 6 or 7 years and recognising we have the Lower Waitaki, there have been a huge number of conversations what role or thought has been given. When I refer to clause 24, we will then, that working group will identify the stakeholders. I believe there's a whole bunch of stakeholders there fully identified. So my concern is, are we reinventing a wheel when we have so much there already? And I look at the community conversations and some of the things that fell out of the rangatata, and we were somewhat surprised about what might have come out of this. So yes, a concern, but really we have so much in play already in that space. How will it interlink in this process?
You don't have to answer that. This is about clarification. Yeah, well, that is, but I think you're putting this too heavily on the staff members at the other end of the table. And I think that if we have a discussion after this, we can seek clarity then. Sorry, Councillor, if you don't do that. My ruling at this point. Councillor East.
I'll save my question for later. I think I don't have anything about clarity.
Fantastic. Councillor Robinson.
Clarification really too, but so what I gather from it is it's a Runanga initiated project seeking assistance from both councils for a jointly led approach to the Waitaki catchment. Is that correct?
I wouldn't necessarily describe it as assistance, but as a collective working together.
My other question really is, if we accept this, what is the time frame, I guess, for the outcome sought for this part, and the implications, I guess, on this council and our resources? Yeah, but it just feels like it's an urgent, something urgent, and it's taken over from something else, and I just hope that's not the case.
Sorry. Yeah, look. I think we need. Can we just step back just one step here, because I think I don't know if there's misunderstanding. I'm being on the nose about this, Stella, but this plan at the moment sits with the Ministry for the Environment, and I think that we need to understand the context of the request to that end. And I've just said to Stephanie, I think we need to put that on the table so people understand that. If you are happy to answer that, then that's fine. If not, Stephanie can.
So the reason that it appears to be brought with urgency is because we had the opportunity to align these two council meetings, that they were conveniently on the same day. So it was an opportunity for us to stand together as a group and go, we support the idea of managing the holistically. So it's not urgent, it was just a good opportunity to bring this through. In terms of the way that the plan is currently structured, we have a standalone Waitaki Catchment water allocation plan that only deals with allocation and deals with allocation within the Canterbury boundary. There's a section of that plan that has to be in the Otago regional plan. It was in their previous plan and it's been picked up and put through into their currently notified plan. But the plan itself is administered under an Act of Parliament, the Waitaki Act, which then sits with MFE. So we don't officially own the plan, the Ministry for the Environment owns the plan. So there's quite a lot of moving pieces and working out the best way through these moving pieces or bringing these pieces together in a way that we can have a holistic management plan will be part of the project scoping that needs to be undertaken. We don't even know if it's going to be possible to achieve that because the Waitaki Act is the Waitaki Act and we don't know if we'll have the opportunity to lobby Parliament to be able to get that high enough on the agenda to get looked at. But this is an opportunity to start the conversations. Tiffany, was there anything you'd like to add?
Sorry. Well, for my clarity, Anita, I see you there. That explanation sits okay with you? It does. All right, we'll get back to our clarity. So now we're at Councillor Ward.
Yes, a lot of my concerns already fleshed out. I just wonder why this was being pushed through so urgently when there's a lot more information we need to discuss. And what really concerned me, and Councillor Mackenzie brought this up, that the two motions are different. And I just think there should have been some more clarification discussion before this was brought to the meeting today.
Thank you, Councillor Pauling. You're next.
Oh, kia ora. I was just going to say that I'd like to move the resolutions if we're finished questions.
It's probably not that idea. Actually, if you want to put that up here. So we'll get a mover and a seconder for that. Councillor Pauling and a seconded by.
I'll second, Grant.
By Councillor Edge. Okay, so Anita, what we do here in Canterbury, once we've got a mover and a seconder, we ask staff to step back from the table. And this now becomes a discussion of councillors where they can use some of the opportunities that's available to them to talk about the issues they have or concerns they have. So we'll start that process now, and that's been mooted by a number of people. So Councillor Mackenzie, ready, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I wonder if perhaps some people are reading this motion and interpreting two different ways. I interpret it by saying,
Peter, does the mover get to speak first? Or?
Oh, only if you want to.
Sorry to interrupt, but that's the process, isn't it?
Well, go ahead.
Kia ora, thank you. Yeah, look, I've moved this because we've heard this discussion come from the representatives for Waiho in particular. Waitaki in particular over the last couple of years. It's been through Te Rōpūtuia a number of times. Their keenness to work on the Waitaki River as a whole. And of course, as we can understand from what the staff have told us, there's some interesting complexities with this river as it straddles the boundaries between us and the Otago Regional Council. And as I can see in the resolutions, it's about starting a process whereby we get a progress report on the 14th of August, where the staff will work through all the issues that people have raised. And because both us, Canterbury Regional Council and the Otago Regional Council are involved in the process, all those statutory obligations we have to the planning process, including engagement with all of our parties, communities, all the partners and the stakeholders doesn't go away. So I'm completely comfortable that will be part of the process that the staff will bring back to us. So yeah, I just think it's really important to support. It offers us a significant opportunity to do something unique around this river that is well overdue. It's a significant river catchment, of course, from a cultural perspective, but also economically and environmentally and socially, of course. So it offers a really good opportunity for all those parties to work together, including our communities and all the other like I said, stakeholders that will be involved in the process as it pans out. So I really thank the staff for bringing this to us. It's great that the Otago Regional Council are looking at it. I don't agree that the two motions are substantially different. They're effectively saying the same thing. They just might mention, our one mentions the parties involved in the partnership at the moment, which I think is appropriate. So yeah, just really support it and compel our councillors to support it too. Kia ora.
Okay, thank you, Young. Okay, following procedure, Grant, and then Ian.
Thanks, Chair. Yes, no, look, I really support this. I think this is a fantastic approach to managing such a big and important catchment, and I think it's potentially a way forward for us to manage all of our catchments actually. But the whole thing is sort of related to, I'm looking at the NPS freshwater section 3.5, which does talk about integrated management and the purpose of integrated management. And that's basically to take this Kiutiki Tai approach and recognise the interconnectedness of everything in the whole of the environment. And I think too that the NPS, it wasn't the NPS actually, it was the NBA Act and Spatial Planning Act had talked about cross-boundary, people working cross-boundary on various things like this, where the boundaries are a bit sort of strange with the overlapping catchments. So I think it's going to be really good, and I think that if we undertake this study and then see what comes out of that, and then go forward with a really good planning process, and I think it will actually relate really well to the development of our RPS. Thanks.
The recommendation in front of us is asking us to approve work to shift the management of the Waitaki River to Canada Regional Council, the Otago Regional Council, and the 3 Runa. Now, I'm ambivalent about that request, but what I'm concerned about is that A, we haven't had a briefing on it, B, we actually don't know what, and point 10 talks about the 3 iwi or Manawhanawa having expectations around rangatiratanga, tautiakatanga, obligations and aspirations, and they want that reflected in the planning provisions. What we don't know is what those are. And it seems to me that we're asking a bunch of councillors who actually know nothing about the Waitaki River and its plan, apart from perhaps Nick and Yuki, that with the greatest respect, and then the David and John have been involved in his own committees. But nobody down in the Waitaki knows anything about this. And I would have thought the first step, if we want to have the Waitaki community buy into a process whereby we move from the existing management regime to a new regime which is controlled by the 2 councils and 3 Runa. But the first thing you should do is actually socialise that proposal to the communities. Now, I've talked to the generators, the irrigators, landowners, local MPs, and actually MPs and the ministers in Wellington, and none of them know anything about this. And I would have thought, if the first instance, if you want to have any faith in the process and not raise alarms and a whole lot of knee-jerk reactions, the first thing you should do is make sure that the locals understand what's going on and that they're comfortable with what's being proposed, and they may even understand what's being proposed. And so I've got a real issue that we are being asked to make an opinion on this, and this is quite, it's quite specific. We're asking to be managed as a whole by the Canterbury Regional Council, the Otago Regional Council, and then the three Runa. Now, the difference between our motion and the Otago one is, the Otago one is more in line with what Zella's saying. Our motion is far more specific than that. It's asking for the management to be shifted from here to this new entity. And I think the first thing we should do before we pass this recommendation is go back and instruct our staff and the Runanga to talk to their local community about what we propose. And when the local community has reflected on it, then we are in a better position as councillors to reflect on which way we should vote in terms of it. I'm not prepared to vote on it. I'll vote against this until I know what the local community thinks about it, because I can't make a judgment call on this on my own.
Well, basically, I was suggested that I wait until we get more information, so it's fine. I'll wait until we get more information. Thank you.
I've been here 4.5 years, Peter. I might get my surname right by now. Anyway, I'll put it down. Anyway, I won't go there. In principle, as a scientist, as somebody totally believe in integrated catchment management, and I think that's a really valuable potential way of managing. And clearly, because political boundaries have been drawn in a way that cuts rivers and catchments in pieces, that's a really good thing to work towards having that alignment that takes the river into account, not political boundaries. And obviously working with partners of Runanga is a really important thing. I am slightly concerned that that there isn't as much information as I would perhaps like, but I do note that this is beginning the conversation, and so I will support it because I this would have to go through a series of steps before the decisions. But it does say, the work is currently unbudgeted, which presumably means it's not clear-cut staffing for doing this piece of work. I know we've got the RTS, which has got tight deadlines, and that's an absolute priority for us and for right the way across our PAs. And so, and we've also potentially got some coastal work, which I know is of importance, and Runanga across Canterbury is flagged, but coastal is something that is important, albeit I know that then feeds into the integrated plan and we've got some timelines, but it would be helpful to have got a clear message in here as to how much budget, staff time, if there's any implications for the time frames of those other pieces of work that we already have already got on our books. But I think this is the starting point, and that information should hopefully come through. And I'm essentially assuming that staff making a recommendation to support this means they are across that, and that they have taken into account the other bits of work that are in train.
Thank you, Councillor East. And then
thank you. Look, I support in totality the notion of treating the Waitaki catchment as one catchment. I currently sit on the lower Waitaki zone committee, and I think it would be better to be treating the area as one. I look at the purpose that is outlined in the paper, and there's a couple of words that stick out to me. One is partnership, and I sort of looked up a definition: an arrangement between two or more people to oversee business operation and sharing its profit and liabilities. And I share Councillor Mackenzie's sentiments and others that the wider community knows nothing of this, and we should be canvassing them before we get to this point. The second word that pops up in the purpose is holistically. and I've sought a definition of that, encompassing the whole of the thing and not just the part. Now, I find it quite diverse when we look at point 2 and the key points, is that the Runanga have approached Environment Canterbury and Otago Regional Council to ask if they might jointly consider developing a more holistic, again, approach to managing the Waitaki River, and then at the end, it is specifically for water quality and water quantity purposes. So I'm sort of worrying a little bit about the scope of the Runanga's interest in this and being involved in this joint approach. And then we get down to point 10. As reflected in the Waitaki iwi management plan, Mana Whenua has expectations to have their rangatiratanga and the associated kaitiangataka obligations and aspirations reflected in plan provisions for the catchment. Again, and I've said this numerous times over my time in ECAN, that Mary words are slipped into the paper without any corresponding definition. So I look at rangatiratanga, and the definition I got there was absolute sovereignty, self-determination, autonomy, Maori independence. So again, I'm sort of wondering where this whole joint committee or management of the catchment is leading, and Kaitiangataka Maori environmental management. So I have some great concerns about the fact that our wider community have not been consulted. We seem to be going down a track of a management structure that is has a primary focus of addressing some rangatiratanga. So I'm not of the mind to support this paper as it stands at the moment. I think there needs to be a significant piece of work done to bring the community of the Waitaki catchment up to speed with what may or may not be intended, and bring a paper back that reflects that. I don't have any specific objection to the Canterbury Regional Council, Otago Regional Council working with iwi to look at an effective management policy of the catchment, but the way it's structured at the moment, I don't think I can support.
Sorry, thank you, thanks. Councillor Cramble, then Councillor Sunkle, Councillor Ward.
Make sure I can be seen. Don't want to be hiding away. Kia ora tātou. Nei te mea te kia koutou. Great paper. Awesome paper. I really enjoyed reading it. Especially, having the background information about the Waitaki Amendment Act in 2004, and as Chair Scott's already mentioned, that it's it is under the ministry, and that I've been on the council. This is my third term, 7 years, 8 years. Every time we've met with Moeraki, Waiho, Arowhenua, they always talk about their ancestral river, the Waitaki, the tears of Aoraki, as it flows from Aoraki all the way down to from the mountains to the sea. So just really acknowledging the connection that people have, and I've heard that councillors have been on the upper Waitaki and the lower Waitaki, and so they would have heard Mana Whenua talk about their association with the river, and also about the the Waitaki allocation plan and how it's only about water and water allocation, and that having a bigger, broader picture, bringing in the biodiversity, the land and the water, and bringing it together under one umbrella, I suppose, in catchment. And as we've already heard that the river flows through both the Canterbury and the Otago Regional Council, and there's both of those have jurisdiction over parts of the river. So working with them is paramount. And I liked Genevieve's, Councillor Robinson's explanation. So it's initiated by Runaka, as because with us, with our RPS and before that our integrated management plan, they didn't want to see the Waitaki stuck into as a chapter, and that's been talked about over the last 2 to 3 years, and I'm sure some of the members sitting around the table would have heard those comments. So to me, it's not a new thing. Since I've been in and around the Waitaki, it's the comments that I've heard all along, that it's we need to treat it as one body, as I said, from Aoraki all the way down to the sea. So I commend the paper. I'm really looking forward to seeing how the partnership works. Partnership between the councils, not only Otago and Canterbury, but also with the 3 Papatipu Runaka, and of course the ministry. So it's there's so many different levels of people working on this, and I'm really looking forward to that. So on that note, I really like the words used as well. Rangatiratanga, yep. So the hapu or the runaka are asserting their own rangatiratanga by actually initiating this and taking this forward to the Otago and Canterbury Regional Council. They did it on their own mana and kaitiakitaka, because they were all about the holistic view and working together as a community, working together in partnership with Otago and Canterbury. So I'm really looking forward to voting yes on this. Kia ora.
Thank you, Jane. So we'll move now to Councillor Sunkel, then Councillor Ward, and I think we're just about done, actually.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I suspect I will probably support the motion, but I have real empathy for the views of Councillors Mackenzie East and even some of the points raised by Councillor Southworth. I do have a concern that it becomes an entity of the Canterbury Otago Regional Councils and the 3 Runaka that sit there, and in all of these conversations, there's no surprise I ask where is the community. And I guess back to my initial question, the work done within the zone committees, the conversations, all the work that's been in that space, I might have thought that there would be a community aspect to it as well. I recognise where the questions have come from, but I think, and hopefully if staff take on board the concerns that have been raised and the understanding of the absolute importance of community, in my view, that if you don't have the community to buy in and believe they're leading the conversation, then we go nowhere, as others have indicated. So as soon as possible, as early as possible, getting a community conversation going is critical to that way forward, because if we don't do that, we will have another plan on another piece of paper, and we will have a whole lot of folk out there just showing the proverbial and not wanting to know. So I guess we saw a wee bit of that coming through from the rangatata process of aspiration or belief of water and flows and a whole bunch of things that had not been well canvassed with communities or TAs and a bunch of things. So I reluctantly support it, given the caveats that others have noted.
Thank you. So Councillor Ward.
Yeah, can you hear me now?
Yep, we can.
Yeah, I have serious concerns, and I'd just like to echo what Councillor Mackenzie and Councillor East have said. There's been no community involvement. I've talked to a lot of people. And as you know, I'm on the zone committee for the Upper Waitaki, but I've talked to a lot of people and along the river, including some of the irrigation schemes, and no one knew about it. And as Councillor Sunkmore just alluded to, this, we need to be more community consultation. It's not necessarily just about the Waitaki River. It's also about the fact that for the last 50 odd years, water from that catchment has gone out into the wider communities, beyond the catchment boundaries, and all those people don't know currently what's going on, and so it's a heck of a surprise to them. And what does this look like in the plan going forward? There's been no budget allocation towards this, and so for all these reasons, I cannot support it.
that, do we need to go back to Councillor Pauling and Councillor Edge? I'd like to make a comment before we finish. Just a comment that we were approached by the Runanga to look at whether this piece of work was possible in the first instance because the plan is held by the ministry. You want to say something?
Just me, see the irony about the public not being engaged in the voted this morning, not to have the public as a default access to our meetings, seminars, etc. What I would say is we are looking to vote for the commencement of work to consider. So I would have thought the first step was to go, yes, we'd like to commence the work, and then the next step would be to engage with people, which I would presume would include the wider public, the communities on the river, whoever they be. So I fully support it. I think it's great. And again, no need for me to add all the stuff about the catchment and in its entirety, but completely agree. Right.
Say, because we were approached about this piece of work and the opportunity to do this piece of work by Runanga. We talked with Otago Regional Council about that, and they agreed that this was the opportunity. The first thing was that this plan sits with the ministry. So we have to talk to the ministry in the first instance before you go out racing around engaging with anybody at all, actually anybody. The ministry's got to agree that they will release this to do the thing that we want to do with it. And that's the point. The point is that the things that you're asking us to do will happen if it goes ahead. If the minister goes, hey, it's not going to happen, then it's not going to happen. This is the first step. And I hope that you can believe some of what I'm about, some of what I've said. There's a substantial amount of work to be done in the Waitaki allocation plan. There's a very good video, if we still have it, given by Peter Skelton on the Waitaki allocation plan. The Waitaki allocation plan was never completed. The piece on the Whakatau River was never completed in terms of the flows on that river. Fish and Game for a long time have been looking to do that. I sat on the Waitaki, Lower Waitaki Zone Committee for 3 years, and this was always on the agenda. So I think we're trying to get the cart before the horse here a little bit. I understand all the angst, but I also understand that people don't fully understand the process that we're getting ourselves into here at this point in time. All we're asking for you is to give us the next step forward so that then we can engage with the ministry. We haven't done that. We've got a new government and everyone's getting angsty about the whole process, but we haven't got a process yet. So that's my point. So Councillor Edge, go to you, then Councillor Pauling. Councillor Edge.
Yep, sorry, slow machine. Yeah, thanks. I've listened to everything, and I think you're right, Peter. I mean, the key word in that recommendation one is to consider how to go forward in terms of the management. Yeah, so I mean, in terms of the NPS, the current NPS and what happens to that in the future, I'm not sure. It does say in that section 3.53, local authorities that share jurisdiction over a catchment must cooperate in the integrated management of the effects of land use and development on fresh water. And for a regional council like Canterbury Regional Council, that also, I would say, means a liaison with our partners in those three Runanga. But anyway, that's fine. So hopefully I'm certainly supporting it. Cheers.
Yeah, thank you, Craig.
Yeah, kia ora koutou. Yeah, great to hear the views around the table. Acknowledge people's anxieties around not knowing everything, but if you read the resolution, that's exactly what we're about to do. We're about to commence work to consider how the catchment could be managed as a whole and in partnership, and that will progress it with another report. And I think the other points that have been made, Peter's point's really well made. The ministry holds a really key part of this. So it's not only the Otago Regional Council and Canterbury Regional Council that are involved in this. The ministry will be involved as well. The central government will be involved. We all have responsibilities to our communities as a whole. So I'm not worried about those processes that will come from that. I think the important point here is that as Jan has said, the Runanga have taken the lead to bring everyone together to try and manage this catchment as a whole, which hasn't been successfully done in the past. And I think that's a really key thing. So for us, this is a key partnership step for us to say, the Runanga's come, they've asked us and the Regional Council, Otago Regional Council, to support them in taking that to the Minister. That's important that we do that. We're not saying we've committed everything to this. We're saying, yeah, that should go to the Minister, that should get a hearing so that it can be worked out how to do it. So for those reasons, totally support it. And I don't think the community will be surprised that mana whenua are keen to see the river managed better. For as long as I've been around, and I'm not as old as some, I know that our people have stood up for the Waitaki River from the start. It's our tribal river. It's in our pepeha. It flows from Oldaki, just so everyone knows. And that's no surprise to the community. Through all the resource consent processes I've been involved with in the Waitaki, through the hydro consents, the Waitaki allocation plan, all that, the community are well aware of the mana whenua views on this. And I think it's great that we're finally bringing everyone together. And for us and the Otago Regional Council to be together on that is the best thing we can do. And we're representing our communities in that. So I really think this is a great move. And I think that, things like kaitiakitanga, rangatiratanga, don't necessarily need to be defined in papers when they're in our legislation. Kaitiakitanga has been in the RMA since 1991. Rangatiratanga was in the treaty in 1840. It's in the Ngāi Tahu Claim Settlement Act since 1998, as well as a whole bunch of other acts, and in the apology by the Crown to Ngāi Tahu. So these are things that are in our statutes. They're there, they're explained, they've got meanings. So it's good for people to know that. Kia ora.
Yeah, thank you. Righto. So we won't lose any more time on this. So that's in front of you, Councillor Paul and Councillor Edge. All those in favour of supporting this motion, say aye.
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 That was good. All those against?
Aye.
Right. I take it that that's passed, and I take it that the abstentions are and the noes are Councillor McKenzie, Councillor East, and Councillor Ward. Thank you. I think it will be important that we stay pretty close to this piece of work, fella. Obviously, there's a bit of concern here, and I think the other thing that is that we will pass that on. I don't know if Anita's still online or not from the Otago Regional Council, but she would have picked up what we said, and maybe you can convey that to her, and we will convey that to the Runanga also. Look, the next thing is there's 8.8, my report. We're going to take that as read and move that, receive the chair's report. Someone like second that, please. I think John. So all those in favour, please say aye. All those against, that's carried. Right, the last piece of business is our next council meeting is on the 1st of May 2024 at 10:30. And since I Karakia this in, I will Karakia us out with Anuia. Anuia kiti uru tapanui o tāne, kia wātia, kia māma, ti nākau, ti tinana, i wai ura, i ti arataka koira e rongo whakakaria, aki kia ronga kia tina. Omie, uie, kai. Thank you very much today. It's been a longer one than usual, and I think we've got through it reasonably well. So, well done.